Moving on to our public comment, and so those families who are here for that part, if you really would love to stay, we invite you, but if you don't want to stay, we completely understand also. So you're free to head out. And congratulations and have a great night. Yes. So we are moving on to public comment. I have a couple of people. I have Jim Bailey and Angie Janeski after that.
Good evening, board. My name is Jim Bailey, and I'm speaking as a private citizen, just representing myself. Last board meeting, I shared about an organization that I feel aligns with the vision that OUSD seems to be pursuing lately, and that is of a student-centered vision. And, you know, I said, I'm going to email you some stuff. Well, 3 weeks later, I finally sent you a little barrage of some pieces of information, maybe more than you wanted, I don't know, some links. But I just wanted to follow up on that and share that I by no means am saying OUSD needs to or should, in my recommendation, affiliate, you know, and try and become a Education Reimagined district. But I share that information because what I'm seeing is an alignment that's occurring organically in this valley with the leadership that we have now. That and I see Ed Reimagine as a resource for, you know, for staff, you know, here at OUSD, for teachers, and for admin, because they do serve all of those people. And even for public understanding of what we're doing, you know, and ways to explain the benefit to kids and all kids. And I just wanted to, so I took some time to look at kind of what OUSD has been doing and how it's related to kind of the five kind of key ideas that Ed Reimagine gets into. So let's say one, learner-centered is a language that Ed Reimagine uses. And you guys have, you know, your student-centered mandala of putting the student at the center of your decision-making at all levels, classroom, admin, all the staff, right? So that's total alignment right there. Another area is with OUSD is a culture of inclusion. You've talked about that, making sure that's a focus. And at Ed Reimagine, they call that their personalized, relevant, and contextualized environment for learners, where you consider each learner's passion, strengths, needs, their family, their culture, and their community, right? So I see there's just alignment there. You guys are already doing it. Another one is the community classroom program that you guys have started. Just ties right in with what they call socially embedded learning. You know, it's about meaningful relationships with adults, peers, and community members, along with a concept they call open-walled learning, the idea that learning happens everywhere, not just in the classroom. It's happening all the time in all these interactions, right? So opening up our understanding of where learning can come from. And the teacher isn't just the sage on the stage, right? There's a lot, learning's happening all the time. We are biologically built to learn. So there's that. Now there's two areas that I don't know if they fit in with where we're at right now. And one is just this idea of competency-based education, which is a move towards demonstrating competency, not grouping strictly based on age or grade, but hey, you showed that you know Algebra 1, done, move on. So that's one, might be difficult. It's structurally, I think, difficult to manage. And then the other one is the idea of learner advocacy, and that's voice and choice. And I think that happens in every teacher's room to some degree. You know, we used to do homework you assign yourself every now and again, and let the kids figure something out, and they would show up with good information. And we would also do like a free choice Friday, you know, something that you wanted to learn about. So I just wanted to share that I see OUSD really having this amazing vision that aligns with things that are happening now nationally. And I'm really, really inspired. And I'm really proud of this district for making some positive changes. So thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Angie Janeski, and then we have Andy Gilman.
Hi, I'm Angie Janeski. I am here speaking as a teacher, not as the union president. I just wanted to publicly thank both Tiffany and Cheryl and the school board for sending us to the Professional Learning Communities conference. I found it to be so inspiring, and just we just came, well, while we were there, the group that was there, we were so connected and bonded about student success, how to do that. And when we came back, we just were like, we're doing this. So it just was wonderful. Thank you so very much for putting professional development first, like for us. We haven't had that. I don't think I've ever been sent on a professional development trip in this school district, and I've been here for a very, very long time. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you for going and bringing back that excitement.
Oh, we're like charged, right, Robin?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Life-changing.
It was life-changing, which means it's life-changing for our kids.
Absolutely. Andy.
Thank you. Some of you know, and some of you may not know, on Sunday from 3 to 5, this coming Sunday, the Ojai Talk was holding a panel, and the subject is Ojai's declining public school population. And that was really inspired by the November 2017 panel we did on tourism in Ojai, where I did not know, and I learned from Andy Cantwell about the declining school enrollment, but also in that panel we got a much stronger sense of the changing job dynamics that are here. You know, tourism jobs going up, professional jobs going down, and those kinds of dynamics. And so this has been on our radar for a while to say, we think of all the dimensions of a community, such as water, sustainability, and all those things, but having a vibrant public school system is one of those dimensions that we really value. And so what we're going to look at in this panel is have as many sides represented as we can, and that would be Mayor Johnston, for example, Bruce Stensley from the Economic Development Collaborative, Eric Wild, real estate agent and former chamber board president, one high school student. We might have one problem with the person I was going to have, but I'll get a high school student there to say what's it like to be a high school student in Ojai, because I was a high school student in Ojai, but a long time ago. But basically to try to say, in terms of these dimensions, one would be looking at housing, the cost of living here, what some would say is the lack of affordable housing. What can the city and the chamber and the county do about jobs here so that people can afford to live here? And then school performance, the OUSD attracting people that would want to come here, and all the work you guys are doing. So I want to personally invite you, and feel free to promulgate it, to invite people to come and all that. And it's $10, but we're not going to turn anybody away. Anybody who wants to come, especially teachers and students, we would give any scholarship to.
Can you announce where it's happening?
417 Bryant Circle. That's the 2-story building on Bryant, and that's our office, the Agora Foundation office, and it's where the Engage to Impact event was in August. Thank you.
And will
Yeah.
you be filming it?
It'll be filmed, and it'll be on our website, as they all are, and there will be a data packet. So the kind of data, Tiffany, if I didn't say, she's on the panel, but she has supplied me with some really interesting information, but I've gotten some really great stuff on all the dimensions I mentioned. So there'll be a PDF on the website, and it will all be filmed.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
But you're going to bring my packet back, right?
I'm giving you a packet back.
I needed to study.
And then I have 2 other speaker forms, but it looks like they are for specific agenda items, correct? Yes. All right, we are moving to our student advisory. Sophia.
Hi, my name's Sophia Moreno, and I'm a sophomore at Nordoff. At our last 2 meetings, we've discussed an idea that we've named Career Snapshots, which is basically,
Sorry, ignore that.
oh yeah. Our idea is to have professionals from multiple fields come to Nordoff during seminar periods. We haven't had the chance to talk to Mr. Munson about it yet, but we're hoping to do so soon. We're thinking about having this opportunity during the months of October and March. And we didn't think that it would be beneficial to have it random dates throughout the school year, because it could decrease interest and be less impactful for students. The professionals could come in and discuss what they do in their jobs and be able to answer questions from students. And we're also hoping it would be a good opportunity for potential internships for students. We discussed that certain teachers can be interested in sponsoring a professional to come speak in their classroom rather than alternate settings such as the library. We discussed some fields of interest such as medical, which would be different days so that like a doctor could come one day and a nurse could come the other, just so it wouldn't conflict.
Mostly, like, if you know you might be interested in the medical field, but you don't know what that means, you could go hear 4 or 5 different people, maybe an x-ray technician, or, you know you like medicine, but that, if if you do medicine all on the same day, then a student is gonna miss out, so we would kind of spread those people out throughout that. Okay.
And we also discussed possibly offering more of a class structure to teach students about budgeting and how to do their taxes. That's it.
Those are great.
And in the meantime, actually, Mr. Munson wrote back and said he's very excited about the idea, and we'll meet with the students about how we might get that off the ground, and how we get that out to the community. Maybe Mrs. Munson can help us with that, and people, it was just really exciting to see how, and we are a group of 6, they are a group of 6 students, and to see the different interest levels that they suggested, and even knowing maybe their friends are interested, or their parents, there's a parent who's a TV producer, there's a parent who's there's so it can be bringing our parents onto campus. It's a very exciting idea. It was all from their discussions of the day and what seminar is currently, and so I think I was very excited to hear from them.
I have somebody in mind for your budgeting and taxes, so when you get there, let me know. I think that would be great.
And I think you have stuff to do, right? So you're not staying for the whole meeting tonight, right? Thank you.
Highly unusual.
Chuck Crawford, are you ready? Our CSEA president, Chuck Crawford, is going to give us a report.
5-minute timer. The word of the night is respect. Looking at the agenda, there's some really hard work on there, hard decisions. We appreciate you looking at the budget, and those items all represent budget to me, and I thank you for looking at the budget first before looking at cutting us. Things are pretty tight out there, as I've mentioned, the glue, so I thank you.
Thank you. That was not 5 minutes, just FYI.
Getting better at it.
Angie Janeski, our Ojai Federation of Teachers president, union president.
Yes, I'm Angie Janeski, Ojai Federation of Teachers Union President. And I just wanted to report on what we are doing right now as a federation. We are currently just starting a campaign to collect signatures to get the schools and community's first initiative on the November ballot. And if people don't know what that is, I want to explain it real quick. The schools and community's first initiative closes a tax loophole from the 1978 Prop 13 by requiring millionaire and billionaire and big corporations to be assessed the fair market value of their properties and tax them appropriately. I said the 1978 Prop 13 because there's currently a Prop 13 on the ballot, which is very confusing to people. So I didn't want it to be confused with that. If it is approved, it will restore roughly $12 billion to service to services that all Californians rely on. 4.5 billion of which will go to K-12 and community colleges, and the rest will go to support services within a community, within communities. The thing that people do need to know is that it will not change existing protections for residential owners. So everyone seems to keep thinking that this is going to change our property tax, 13, how it saves us and keeps our property taxes low, but it will not change that. And I think that's really important for people to know. And the Federation is very clear that we need more money. Our district knows that intimately, and this is one way to get more money into public education. So if someone asks you to sign that petition, please do.
It also doesn't hit small businesses the way we think it's going to. It's the big.
It's $3 million or more.
Right.
So $1 billion, that's a business that makes $3 million or more. And mostly it's big corporations like Disney. Disney is still paying their same property
78.
taxes that they paid in 1978. So if you think about that and the value of Disney, my understanding, it also doesn't affect agriculture. It's really just those big corporations. So
Chevron has a big
yes,
place up in Northern California.
Yeah. I think people like that. So it's not, and the rest of us, we just get to keep moving along with our property taxes. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We now have the superintendent's report.
All right. I was looking, according to our timeline, it's 6 o'clock and we're at 6 o'clock, so we're doing pretty good. So I'll keep this short. Just two things. First, I want to thank our team for redoing the boardroom. All of our great art, which Angie's going to talk about in a moment, and then for hanging our new logo and our vision. We're very excited about that. And then I just wanted to share some staffing changes. You may be aware that we have 2 retirements on our administrative team. Rebecca Kirkland, our special education director, and Carol Paquette, our assistant principal at Matilaha. And then today we announced a couple of other administrative changes. Javier, who's not sitting there anymore, but Javier will be moving to Topa to be the principal at Topa Elementary School, and he will be starting our pilot Spanish language immersion program there. And then Don Damianos is going to be part-time principal here of our online non-classroom based school, whatever that may be called, depending on your vote later. And then also to do some coordination that's sorely needed at the district, for example, testing coordinator, those kinds of things. And so those 2 things were announced today, and we're excited to see people in new roles and to bring new programs to kids.
Great, thank you. Angie, you're up again.
Well, you can't let some things go by, right?
No.
Let's
These are
see.
all important things.
So I'm Angie Janeski, and I am here tonight to talk as a transitional kindergarten teacher. And I asked if I could change the artwork in the boardroom about a month ago, because instead of celebrating Black History Month in February, I chose to celebrate it in January. And the reason why is because February is all about Valentine's Day with my kindergartners, and they don't want to focus on anything else. And I never ever feel like I am doing the subject justice with my students. So I announced in the beginning of January that we were going to be learning about Africa and African American history, and it was such an amazing experience. And if you don't know, in my class, from the minute the kids get there, we talk about skin tone. We talk about skin tone. Every art project, everything we do is a conversation about skin tone. What's your skin tone? What's my skin tone? Oh, they're all beautiful. It's a conversation about our differences and our similarities and how we treat one another. So we started January out with talking about Africa, and it was so amazing because it turned out that one of my parents is from Morocco. So he came in we started out with landscape of Africa, and he came in, Yosef Ramili, and talked all about Morocco, played drums, showed us all these different aspects of Morocco. And then talked also about how Morocco was the main port for the slave trade. So where I wasn't ready yet to go with that aspect of that history, he just dove right in, and the kids were like, okay, well, which led us into some great conversations. A few days later, another parent in my class, Ellie Jarvis, said she had lived in Zimbabwe and could she come in and speak about Zimbabwe. So I said, come on in. So basically for each week of January, I had people coming in and speaking and showing the kids about Africa, which then led us into the conversation about how Africans got to our country, and having a conversation about slavery, which is really interesting with kindergartners and transitional kindergartners, because you never know where it's going to go and how to have that conversation. And what happened was they said, well, what is a slave? So then we had that conversation, and it was just beautiful, because from there, then we talked about Martin Luther King and had the conversation of why he was so important, and how people wanted to continue, and still do, want to keep people down or make them feel less because of their skin tone, which turned into the most beautiful, amazing conversation that I think I've ever had with children. It was just so profound for them to say, oh, that's wrong. Oh, I don't like that. Why would they do that? No, we're all the same. And then we talked about Ruby Bridges and school segregation. And without me saying anything, all the kids who were of one color jumped up and said, well, we would go to this school, and all the other kids were in this school. And then one of my students said, but if you're not in the same school, you can't be friends. And I said, that's part of the whole point. That's it right there. We should all be friends. So, and then from there, we decided we started learning about different famous African Americans. And as you can see in the center of our of my artwork here, so the artwork is kente cloth, the colorful, it's a kente cloth representation. We did camels for Morocco, and then one of the famous African Americans that we learned about was Katherine Johnson, and she was one of the women she worked for NASA originally. She was known as the computer, an original computer, but it was all in her mind because she was such an incredible mathematician, and she brought the Apollo 13 people home safely because of what she could do, and she was able to get people even into orbit because of her skills. So the kids did a STEM project, and each one of the things in the center is their attempt at making the capsule that the very first one. We watched it. The internet's amazing. It's amazing because I could YouTube that like it coming down, right? And they had a simulation, but then they also showed the actual footage. So I showed them, and we looked at it and saw it coming down, and they were just like, wow, it's going so fast. And it's like, well, that is an animation, but you couldn't really see it. But so that was their attempt. And and then the beauty of it is we just keep going, right? So parents sent in these lovely books on, what was it? I can't remember. There are two books. One's all African American men, and one is all African American women, and it has a picture and then a biography of them, and some of them have died and some of them are still alive. And so we've just been going through it on a regular basis and saying, okay, I have another person for you to learn about. And basically it has led us into Asia, and I had a parent come in and talk all about Japan because he's part Japanese, and so it just keeps it's kind of this amazing thing what with the community has and brings. And so I finally get to come up and tell you about what we did and not be feeling guilty because I didn't get it together. So there you go.
Thank you so much, Angie. And Angie, on the space note, have you seen the videos where the astronauts, while in space, read picture books?
Oh no, you told me about that. We have to do that. Yeah,
That
you
would be fun.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for letting
you.
me put our artwork up.
And thank you for our room. It's so much brighter and entertaining. Item 6.2.
So next, I'd like to introduce our new fiscal services director, Taiwo Madison. Taiwo can come up to the podium. Having been introduced at this board meeting in the podium like 8 months ago, I know it's a little intimidating, but and he came up today and has been kind of hanging out this afternoon, and will officially start with us on Friday. We're very excited. But I heard we got your email set up.
Yes, it's
So-
actually very good to actually have an IT team in. So that was refreshing.
So just read a little bit of background. You bring 15 years of fiscal management experience to Ojai Unified, 10 years in the Business Advisory Services Department of the Santa Barbara County Office of Education, 3 years as the Director of Fiscal Services for Cold Springs School District, and most recently, Fiscal Manager for the Vista Del Mar Union School District in Gaviota. Taiwo is a graduate of the University of Southern California with majors in economics and political science. Has earned a master's degree in business administration from Loyola Marymount. Have your CBO certificate, right?
Yes.
From CASBO. And just a few comments from the references when we called to check his references. It's an honor to work with him. He has an ability to establish collegial and collaborative working relationships, high levels of integrity and competence. And his current superintendent said, "I don't know what I'm going to do without him." So I said, well, you have 2 weeks. So we're very excited. And is there anything you'd like to share?
Well, I've had the opportunity to meet my staff, and first of all, it's wonderful to actually have a staff that's more than one person. And so that's going to be great. I mean, they're a lot of them are in new positions, but they seem to be working well together, and we're going to get it together. I hope to have a business department that everybody can just come to and get what they need. And I want to I feel like the business department needs to be integral within all of the departments and the things. So hopefully you guys will see me around. I'll get to know all of you guys. I don't pretend that I'm going to know everybody's name right away, but I will work on it, and hopefully we'll all be friends. And hopefully I won't say no. I'll say.
We did have a conversation about that earlier.
My goal as a business person is that my job's not to say no. My job is to tell you what your options are to do this, because you can do everything, but you can't do anything, but you can't do everything. Sorry, is the proper thing. So it's going to be a balance that we're going to have to balance. If you want to do this project, do we want to sacrifice this, or is there other ways to do it? So hopefully our goal of the business part won't be say no. It'll be, let's see how we can get you to do this, how we can get this done. And so I'm very excited. I mean, this is definitely a bigger district than the two I've worked with before, but I mean, I'm excited about the challenge. So, and very happy to be here. Excited to start on Friday.
Thank you.
I want to tell you something. I'm the coach of the mock trial team, and we practice right there. And I tell the people that are playing witnesses to make eye contact with everybody. You did that so well. You included the people that matter, right? These guys.
Well, I must say that's actually a lot thanks to Toastmasters, because I'm naturally horrible at public speaking, but I do every Tuesday. I go to Toastmasters. That's helped a lot. I'm still work in progress, but I'm a lot better than I was, let's say, a couple years ago.
Thank you so much. We're excited to have
And I think we sometimes think that we're small, but he's from little districts, and so we are a big district, which.
Moving on to 6.3, which is our elementary school Spanish language program update.
So Cheryl and I would like to provide, mostly Cheryl, would like to provide an update on Spanish language program options. So we hear a lot, and it's been, I think, a standing item in our parking lot from Michael Shanahan to talk about dual language immersion programs. And our guiding coalition talks about dual immersion, and this comes up on a regular basis. So we wanted to give you an update of where we are with dual language immersion, what kind of all of the options, and then what's available to us here in Ojai. So give me just a moment so I can. Okay. It says it's thinking about it, right? Yes. This is one option for Spanish language immersion that's not available to us. Well, for some, unable to cast. Right. All right. Hold on.
Spanish
It was working earlier. All right, let me try just bumping back to this one. Okay, so that works. So, Really's good at that screensaver, but, all right. I can go back and put it on, all right. Cheryl, do you have it? Do you want to read from your slides? And then I'll continue to try and
Go ahead and
fiddle
talk,
with
even
this?
though it's not
Yeah.
projecting.
Yeah.
Sure. So just to talk a little bit about what a dual immersion program can and usually looks like in school settings. Mostly you would take an elementary school site and you would develop a track for dual immersion. And so in some cases you would do a 90-10 model, where in kindergarten and first grade you do 90% in Spanish language instruction. It does mean that you need to acquire materials, so English language arts will do Spanish materials for literature, and then science and history and that sort of thing. And then you would only do about 10% of instruction in English. And then as students move up the grades, they gradually incorporate more English till we get to a 50-50, usually around 5th grade. So that's one way to do dual immersion. And then the other is the 50-50 model, where starting from kindergarten, you just do 50% of the instruction in Spanish and 50% of the instruction in English. You do have to commit to a pathway being built at a school site though, right? So it starts in kindergarten, then you have to be prepared to offer that in 1st grade and 2nd grade and 3rd grade. And so one of the problems, bless you.
Thank you.
One of the problems we get into with our limitations in this district is that we don't have very large school sites. And so it's difficult to guarantee that you're gonna have a path, because you're likely still gonna wanna have the English only path as an option for students too, which means you basically need to guarantee 2 classes in the same grade level all the way up to make sure that you're going to maintain it. And the other thing is, after a student gets past 1st grade, it's usually not desirable for them to enter the dual immersion program because they've missed the instruction, especially early on in kindergarten and 1st grade, and then it's hard for them to maintain the rigor with the language at that level coming in without having been part of the program early on. So there has to be a commitment to keep the classes, even though they might not remain full, as you just naturally lose students through attrition, and then it's not easy to bring students into the upper grades because they haven't been a part of the program. Additionally, you have to have students that have the proper teachers that have the proper credentialing. So it's a B-CLAD that teachers need to be able to teach a bilingual program. And we don't currently have the capacity within our district to have enough teachers with the B-CLAD to teach a dual immersion program right now. And if you had enough money in a district to prioritize funding to recruiting teachers and bringing new teachers in, that would be one way to do it, but we don't currently have that availability in our budget situation. So what we're gonna need to do if we wanna consider a dual immersion program in the future is, as we recruit elementary teachers, which we're currently doing when we have natural attrition of teachers retiring, then we're gonna have to prioritize bringing in teachers with a B-clad so that eventually we have enough teachers with a B-clad and the desire to want to use that B-clad and dual immersion program in our district. So that could definitely take 3 to 5 years to do that recruiting. And again, that would only be happening as our teachers retire and we have natural openings to recruit teachers in.
Cheryl, do you have any idea how many teachers have the B-clad at the elementary level?
I think there's only 2 right now. So
I think we have 4 or maybe 5 in the entire district.
Right.
And not all of those teachers are necessarily interested in
Correct.
teaching in a dual immersion program.
correct.
Is B-clad, is that specific to language, or is that, so it's a language?
It's a
Yeah.
bilingual.
It means they passed the bilingual
Does it-
test.
Does it always mean Spanish, or could it be something else?
Could be something else.
Yeah, it could be in anything.
There are districts that are doing dual immersion in Mandarin as well.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
So-
It definitely does not have to be Spanish, right.
Yes.
So with our small school sizes and then the lack of capacity with properly credentialed teachers, right now those are 2 very big barriers for us to start a dual immersion program. But we do have, we would have an easier time starting a language acquisition program, which looks a little bit more like what we see in the middle school and the high school. So, and it also would look, if you want to compare to elementary, it might look a little bit like what we do with music education right now, where we bring in a teacher and they come in and the students are pulled, let's say for an hour a week, or maybe it's 2 hours a week, and they're brought in with a teacher that has the ability to teach them in Spanish language or whatever world language we choose to offer. And that could be, a model where we can at least bring in some kind of world language instruction into our schools without having to have the dual immersion program, which we're just really not ready to offer at this time.
So
So,
it's kind of an interim bridge option until
Right.
we can get there.
and so that's what we're certainly considering at this point, is how to bring that in and pilot a program and building then the track for how much we think that they will be able to acquire in elementary school, because as we know in middle school, right now we're offering sort of an intro to Spanish and a Spanish 1, but it might be that if kids acquire enough Spanish in elementary school, they pop into Spanish 2 by the time they get to middle school, and then can make it to higher levels of our current Spanish offerings.
Isn't there an issue there with what the UCs and Cal States accept for a language? Meaning you have to have 2 years of a language, and I thought it had to be 8th grade or higher. So you would have to still do, if a kid came in at Spanish 2, we'd have to.
Yeah. So
Ensure.
ultimately, though, they can just develop more fluency. So we could just pull everything down, but they would still take their 2 years. They would
Okay.
just be different like higher level classes.
Right.
So this is the, Javier moving to TOPA will be able to pilot and help us design the Spanish language acquisition program at TOPA next year. They have they're currently operating with the PTO is doing a Spanish language club, which is full and I believe has a waiting list.
Correct.
So we're excited to be able to offer regular within the school day Spanish language instruction.
And it will be for every student, yes?
We have to
Not
work
an
out all
opt-in
of those
program?
details
Okay.
still, but that's the goal.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No, I think that's really good. I'm pleased to see that. So are we gonna be integrating in our future recruiting the VCAD preference or?
Correct.
Yeah.
Which is going to be tough because so is every single other district.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful district.
Right. No, I come here.
Oxnard
but
Union
I'm just
has
saying.
17,000 kids and they have, I think, 25 teachers with B-clad or something like that. It's very hard to find,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Carpinteria has a dual immersion program, and what I'm hearing from that is one of the problems is when students leave it and you can't add students in.
Right.
So it's
we have it on our slide that we can't show you. For some reason, this Google slide just refuses to present. But it's a problem when you have small schools and you have, like Cheryl was saying, if kids can't add after first grade, so you could end up with these really tiny classes in third and fourth grade, and our budget doesn't support, we don't have enough students to support those small classes, because we would have to put the kids in other classes, and those would have large class sizes. So
even at best, we would have to implement sort of a hybridized kind of program.
likely, yeah.
Is BCLAD something that can be acquired, while the teacher's already,
Yeah, you can go take a BCLAD
Is
test.
is it hard to acquire? I mean, because it would be, maybe we could offer incentives to have some teachers become BCLAD certified.
That's definitely a
We'll
possibility.
all go with Linda Jordan to Costa Rica. And I'm all in.
Okay.
I'm totally there.
So we're excited to be able to move forward with Spanish language acquisition, even if it's not a true dual immersion program, but it's what we can do at this time on the recommendation of the guiding coalitions and our community who's asking for this. At one school now, but with the idea that eventually we'd like to bring a similar program to every school.
Very cool. Very cool.
Have the other elementary schools been made, the PTOs and PTAs been made aware of what's happening at TOPA to see if they might be interested in
I'm not sure.
something similar?
You mean the club
Yeah,
model?
especially since it's a waiting list.
Yeah. The other thing is if we're a little bit later, when we get to summer school, we can have an option for Spanish in the summer at any level, elementary, middle, or high school. So we can expand that learning into the summer session.
So you don't lose it all.
Right.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
that. 6.4, Governor's Budget Overview.
All right, so this is our longest item of the night, and it's very exciting. And I would say, Taiwo, feel free to jump in anytime if you'd like. This is just clicked off. Hold on. I've cobbled together some pieces of this from a few different places. I've been to a couple of different budget workshops, a declining enrollment workshop, and some other things. So I'll go through this, but if you have questions specifically, please stop me, because that's easier than going all the way to the end. So just a few initial thoughts, and I put more information in here than I'm gonna go through. I'll make that a little bigger for you. Is that too big? Is that good?
That's good.
Okay. So overall, the economy is still growing, but people everywhere I go, they say a recession will come. It's just a matter of when, so we have to be cautious of that. And the really big thing this year is that the budget surplus is much smaller compared to last year. So last year we had a budget surplus, and you'll see in a later slide that was good for us. This year there is a surplus. It's smaller in general, and we're getting less of it. There's a really big focus on homelessness at the state level, and so some of the surplus money is going to that. So, and to healthcare affordability, et cetera. So just an overview, this is where the general fund revenues for the state of California come from. A huge percentage of that is personal income tax, which is also pretty variable. So we have our funding formula at the state is a little tricky because it can go up and down and fluctuate pretty significantly because so much of it is based on personal income tax. I highlighted the ones here. This is the general education proposal, and I highlighted the ones that are important. So there's the regular, not the regular, but the $84 billion for Prop 98. Some of that goes to K-12, some of it goes to community colleges. So this year, there's an additional $1.2 billion for district LCFF, and a 2.29% COLA. The thing that's important to notice, though, is that at our first interim, we believed based on last year's projections, the COLA was going to be 3, and now it's 2.29. So when you see second interim in March, our revenues will have declined significantly because the COLA is less than predicted at first interim. There's a lot of money this year in the governor's budget that's going to one-time programs and one-time funding. One-time funding is really difficult for us because you shouldn't hire people, so you build programs, but the programs aren't necessarily sustainable. And sometimes there's even strings with that one-time money. And some of this one-time money is competitive grant funding, which is really difficult because you don't know if you're gonna get it. The size of our district puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage. We don't have a professional grant writer on staff. And if we write a grant, it's a lot of time and effort for us, and we may or may not get it. So one-time competitive grant funds are probably I think, a not very effective way to deal with budget surplus, but that's where they are. There's $250 million in on-time or ongoing funds, but this is a little funky. So last year, and I have another slide about this, but last year we got essentially double the amount we get this year for preschool students with special needs. Last year we got the money and it didn't have any strings attached, so we could kind of do things with it. This year it's ongoing but one time. So this particular funding is one time. We'll get more money next year, but there's strings attached to it this year. So everybody's kind of unsure about how that money looks and what it's gonna be when we finally come out with the additional information by May. Good news, we have some additional money for school nutrition, because that's a program that's always expensive. And other good news, there's some money coming to us for special education base reform funding, because our general fund contribution to special education is significant. So we're happy to get additional funds there.
I have a question, just so I understand the terminology you're using. When you said, for example, the school nutrition, you said 70 million total, parens, 60 million ongoing. That means there's a commitment to provide that again
Yeah.
next year and next
Yeah.
year and next year forever, or is there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So that's good. We like ongoing. One-time funds are not our favorite. So just a little bit about Prop 98, and I have a couple of slides that are better about this, but the important part of this is they're projecting a test 1 year, which hasn't happened I think since the 80s, and I'll show you a little bit about why that's important. So basically that 84 billion, here's what the test 1 looks like, and please don't ask me a lot of questions about this because it's pretty complicated, but we have been in a test 2 year for a very, very long time, and the test 2 year basically looks at the prior year funding, and then it's funded on a per student growth model, right? So if you have more students, you get more money statewide in the whole Prop 98 bucket, not us particularly, but so you get prior year, and if you have more kids. The state of California is in declining enrollment, so if we have less kids, we would get less money into the Prop 98 fund. So this year, and actually on the school services projection, the next 3 years are projected to be a test 1 year, which is interesting because you just get straight 39% of the general fund revenues. So instead of this test 2 with this ADA in the prior year and all of that, schools get 39%. This next year, if it's a test 1, that doesn't really mean a lot for us, but if the state of California continues to have overall declining enrollment, we would get 39% divided by fewer students. So you would actually get more money per student. So test 1 could eventually be positive for school funding.
I don't want to go
Yeah.
outside the bounds. I want to just ask, why the different colors? Does the fact that it uses the term test mean that each of those is sort of like the one that gives rise to the most funding?
No,
Okay.
there's a really complicated formula about which test you end up being in based on lots of things I don't understand.
Okay. Sort of reminds me a little of basic aid.
Kind of. So it's for the entire state. So it would be good for us, if there were the same amount of money divided by less students, it could have a per student. So looking at, in general, LCFF funding, since 2013, and this slide's important, not because of the different colors, but it's important because if you look at 2021, this is essentially the lowest year of increase in LCFF funding since 13-14. So you can see that as we get a little deeper into this. So what do our actual numbers look like? We have, you can see this year's base grant, so this is our per student funding outside of any additional add-ons, so it's about $200 additional per student. So, up to $9,500 in our high school. And then we have what we call supplemental and concentration funds. So UPP is unduplicated pupil percentage. So those are our English learners, free or reduced lunch, foster youth. At 20% of unduplicated count, we get an additional $1,700 to $1,900 per student. At 55% concentration across the district, we would get an additional $4,000 to $5,000 per student. We are at 53% unduplicated count right now. So we have all the students and we don't get the funding. So that's an area of growth that I've mentioned, that working on making sure that we identify every single family that qualifies for free and reduced lunch. Really, Cheryl and I have been talking about next year some ways that we can really dig into our data, make sure that our data is accurate. So this is I mean, it's almost twice again as much at the high school for students who are in that concentration area. So we get the 2.29% COLA, but our costs continue to rise. This is last year, if you remember, in the 2019 Budget Act, the governor put one-time funds towards buying down the PERS and STRS rates. So it's important to know that our PERS and STRS rates are still going up. They're just not going up as much as they would have if he hadn't put that money towards that. So for our STRS employees, they go up about 1.3%, but for our PERS, it's more than 3% of an incline. So you can see that's a really big jump from 19.7 over here on this right-hand side, all the way up to 22.8%. So that's a pretty big jump next year for our PERS contributions. So jumping over to special education, we know this is good news. We don't know exactly how much this will work out to on a per student basis. Just that there will be more money going to our SELPAs, and our SELPA is a I would say severely underfunded SELPA. That there's probably a different term than severely, but they're underfunded. So some SELPAs, which is a special education local plan area, right? I think so. Some SELPAs won't get more money, but ours will definitely get more money. So we don't know exactly what that will look like, but that will be good news to us.
And when do we find out? After the budget?
Yeah, right. So between now and May. So some of these we wait for trailer bills, and then some of these we're waiting for allocations. So just some additional things about the preschool money. So the one-time preschool money is difficult. Last year we bought some new furniture. We bought a lot of things that we needed to upgrade the preschool. This year, that preschool money for 3 to 5-year-olds with special needs, it has to be spent on, and let's say I don't think we have the language in here. It basically has to be spent on special education services, but it's one time, and so it's a little bit tricky, and we'll have to do some work to figure out how we can spend that money in a way that doesn't ultimately contribute to our maintenance of effort. That we would have to spend that same amount next year, even if they don't give us the one-time funds. So more coming out on this in the future.
Something in that then you have to take.
Right. So it's weird because the way it's written seems like they want you to increase your maintenance of effort, and then they'll take it away, and then now you have to pay that. So we're trying to not fall into that trap. Community schools, I was really excited when I read through all of these bullet points because we're doing a lot of this and we want to do a lot of this, and this is right in line with our vision and the center part of our vision and family fund and everything that we're doing. And then I was less excited when I got to the last bullet that says it's likely to be competitive grants, because that means lots of time writing a competitive grant.
A lot of reporting.
Yeah, which we're happy to do, but I mean, so you build something beautiful with one-time funds, and then it's not sustainable. So we have to think about what that would look like.
And I got the impression reading it that it we aren't really the demographic there.
I don't think so. No, and this part where it says awarded to a small number of
yeah,
LEAs,
I
I'm
saw
like,
that.
I could probably list those LEAs on my hands that
Mm-hmm.
would, who it's probably into, but we'll see. This is good for us, not specifically, but just broadly, that there's a lot of money allocated to mental health, which is something that we continue to struggle with in our schools and trying to provide adequate services. But this mental health money specifically is in the community school grant, so there's nothing specifically. But for school nutrition, this is great. So on top of the COLA, they get an additional $60 million. We get an increase in our rate per meal reimbursement, which is, I think, currently 23 or 25 cents. So, well, I guess we would. So that's good. I did the math. I think it ends up being less than $10,000 for us over the course of the year. But it's $10,000 that program can desperately need. Some
And
money.
how much were our balance at the end of the year?
We were
Wasn't it?
negative 90.
Yeah,
Was it
we
90?
contribute about $108,000 a year to nutrition services
Yeah.
out of the general fund. So now we would contribute $100,000, which we're working on also as part of the overall budgeting process. So some other small grants, a little $10 million here. So career and technical education. This remains to be a difficult funding stream. So there's really two pockets of money. There's the CTE incentive grant. We were partnering with a county prior. We were partnering with the county when I was there. You were partnering with me. And then this year, the model changed and we no longer partnered with the county. We got our grant. We were expecting that we would get 150 to 200. We got $66,000, which was significantly less, but everyone got significantly less. And then there was a structure. So every year they kind of redo the allocation formula. And there was a structure where we had, I don't remember how many, 20, 100? We had just too many students that put us into the large district funding category. So I don't know in what world we are with the large districts, but we were not with the medium districts and we weren't with the small districts. And they all got more money, but we were just over the amount that put us in the large funding category. So there was supposed to be another allocation coming out in March for next year. That, you can see this little line in here. Round 5 allocations were approved. Questions and missteps led to delay. It's a very nice way of saying it, but essentially they're not releasing next year's application until next year. So we don't know how much money we get for 2021 until sometime in 2021, which makes it difficult for us to plan and difficult for us to staff and difficult for us to run the CTE that we want to run. The second part of this, though, is the Strong Workforce Program. We submitted an application for that in a consortium with Oxnard and Ventura. This says that we're going to find out in February. I think it's more like April, but February 26th would be lovely if we found out if we got that grant. So that's competitive grant funding, again, that we have to apply for every single year. So in terms of building sustainable programs, it's not really a useful model. So overall, the CTE funding model doesn't really isn't built for us to build sustainable programs year after year after year. So every year we'll have to come back and say, now, what about this pathway, and how much are we going to fund, and what kind of internships can we do, and what does our support look like, because we don't have stable funding. So, transitioning, this is something that Angie talked about, and I just wanted to share this because there's a little bit of confusion about the 1978 Prop 13, which is a limits to residential and commercial property tax. The 2020 Prop 13, Californians for Safe School and Healthy Learning, which is a state school facilities bond. It doesn't raise taxes. It's actually, the bond is repaid from the state general fund. And you have a resolution later in the agenda to talk about that.
And it's on the March ballot.
And
not
it's on the
November
March ballot, right. And then in November, there's the Schools and Communities First that doesn't have a proposition number assigned. That's what Angie was talking about, that goes back to that 1978 Prop 13, and does a split roll where they take the residential and commercial separately and treats the high-end, large commercial properties in a different way. So just some clarity around those 3 initiatives. We're excited that some of those could bring much-needed potential funding to the schools.
Is that Communities and Schools First, is that actually sufficiently, signed up with the petition and so forth to be on the ballot in November?
I don't think so yet.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
And when would it be implemented? Like 2025?
No, it'll be 2021.
Who knows? So this is just a little bit about Prop 13. And I was really excited about this because, I'll scroll up here. One of the things that's been problematic sometimes with the state bonds is that there's a first in, first out. And so if you're not in line with your project and your everything ready to go, then when they pass it, like all the money's already gone. And so I was a little bit worried because we're not currently in line. We're not ready for that yet. We're doing all the prep work, but we're not there yet. But the governor instead has said that this Prop 13 would have priority categories. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a shovel-ready project to start with. That's not good. Okay. This is very important information that you can't see. Let me just read these numbers to you.
That's on our screen.
Well, it's not on mine. So, and
Can
now,
anybody else cast it? Can you cast it?
can you guess?
I didn't
okay.
download Chrome.
All right,
Sorry.
so I'll just tell you that,
Tell me how.
essentially, I was looking over here at Thanes earlier to see if he could cast it, but he can't. So
Mine says no devices found when I try to cast it.
you're probably not on the staff network. You might be on the guest network.
You wanna try doing it?
I'll just read these.
Okay.
So basically, if Prop 13 passes, Ojai Unified School District would be eligible for up to $4.2 million in state funding. We would be required to provide a local match of $2.8 million for a total of $7 million for modernization funding. If you look at this, which you can't see, but on our school list, it's interesting because the amount of state funding we would get is based on how old the schools are, when they were last modernized. Some of our schools were modernized, they close enough, I don't know how to say that, they were modernized recently enough that they won't be eligible for more money until 2027. So if there were money left, or if there's another bond in 2027, a lot of our schools would be eligible for more money than this 4.2. But, and it's interesting because TOPA has the most, $1.2 million for TOPA in modernization. And like Matilda has 53,000. So it's not necessarily based on need, but based on scope. So as we consider the possibility of a bond for us in November, that bond would be the source of matching funds. So that would get us the $2.8 million to be eligible for the $4.2 million in the Prop 13 if it passes.
And do we know if it's required that it's from a new bond, or could it be Measure J?
So in talking about it, our Measure J doesn't specifically say that we'll be matching it. So you write the bond, and I guess we did this in our prior bond where you write the bond language so that it's a match for these projects. But Measure J, I don't think qualifies.
Okay.
Can do more research on that, but that was our
But this
initial.
helps us set how much we wanna be asking for in our bond, right? Or
And
did we already?
We
talk
haven't
about
said that. Mm-mm, not yet.
And makes it more likely that people will vote for it.
Right, because
If there's matching.
yeah, it allows us to have matching funds.
Things pool?
So is Prop 13 gonna pass? It looks pretty good. It passes at 55%, and people feel pretty solid on these numbers. Schools and Community First initiative, I don't need to go over that. That has, the numbers on that are not as good. God, okay.
Ours looks good.
I don't know why mine doesn't look good, but maybe because it's a Mac, I don't know. So this is just to show you something that everybody is telling districts to watch out for, which is increasing electricity rates. And none of these numbers mean anything to you since you can't see them, but essentially that all rates
You
are.
can see the red lines.
Yeah, that's the important part. All rates
Now
are projected
going
to
up.
go up, right. The dotted lines is just the difference between proposal and projected. So they're proposing higher rates than are currently projected. And so what are districts doing to combat that? They're modernizing inefficient equipment, smart buildings, and going for renewable energy, which is an item that you'll see on our agenda later today. How are you paying for that? With local bonds or private sector funding. And the other thing about solar that's interesting right now is there's some more one-time money in non-Prop 98 general funds for services for power outages. So if we were to do solar now, we may be able to leverage some of this other money to get batteries, things like that. So we could maybe leverage those together. So what's next? This is what's next for this large state budget. We'll have better real numbers by May 15th. What's next for us is we are, now that we have a fiscal services director, we're working, we're gonna be best friends next week and the week after that and the week after that, working to get our second interim done, looking at, meeting with every department to look at their budgets, looking at our staffing, looking at our retirements, and really putting together a comprehensive budget plan for you prior to March 15th. And you'll see a number of the items on the agenda today are specifically related to budgetary items and things that we can do to help our budget overall. Questions?
That was a lot.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
We are going to move to the adoption of the consent calendar, and then I think we'll take a 5-minute break after that. And I just wanted to say before we adopt the consent calendar, thank you to the Ojai Women's Fund for the grant of $10,000 that is going into our family fund, which is great. So thank you so much. We're very happy to have that family fund to help our families in need.
And I
Does
would
anyone know
also
what
like,
the family fund is?
I thought we had talked about it. You want to
Well, I know
introduce
what
the
it is.
family
I mean,
fund?
I think I generally know, but, it's a fund for families.
Well done.
But it's kind of being more central and bringing money into the centralized pot that everyone is aware of, that's available for things like field trips and other, expenses that families that otherwise would have a tough time doing things would be able to be supported.
We've done winter coats and bicycles and internet access, hotspots, that kind of computers,
Yeah.
those kinds of needs. So we're
Maybe
very
AP
grateful.
tests, maybe
AP tests,
SAT
right.
tutoring. We the list keeps growing of things that we could potentially assist families with.
So we're very grateful for that. Did you want to say something, Jane?
I did, I also wanted to recognize our volunteer coaches, the walk-on coaches that are listed in the consent calendar. We couldn't have these sports without the parents that volunteer and help out, and community members, so thank you.
Do we have a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
I'll move to adopt.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And we will take a 5-minute recess. Come back to order. We are on 7.3.1, special education, moderate to severe program update and consideration.
So this is just a, you're not voting on anything specific tonight, but just to allow staff to continue to do this exploration. Oh, you can't see my screen. Hold on. Yay, okay. So we have, in special education for students who are moderate to severe, we provide services to them up to age 22. We have a program that's located on the Nordhoff High School campus called Ojai Teams, but it's run by the Ventura County Office of Education. We also have some students who are moderate to severe who go down to a program in Ventura called Boswell. So this year, you can see in 1920, we have 5 students, and for those 5 students, and just ESY is extended school year, which isn't, so we provide summer services, which are not covered by our summer school proposal and are also not covered in this budget calculation. It's kind of a separate thing. And IA is instructional aid. So for those 5 students this year, at the end of the year, we'll be paying about $227,000 for their education. And if you look to next year, you can see we move up to 10 students at an estimated cost of about $365,000. So as we're looking at cost cutting, this is an additional $130,000 that we would expect to be paying to serve these students next year. So an option that we have is to run this program ourselves instead of have VCOE run it. And we kind of gave you numbers so you can see next year and the projections of where we're going. For us, it's already on our campus, so we would have a teacher, we would have 1 instructional aide for every 3 students. We believe that we wouldn't need to have an additional administrator. We could absorb that into one of our current positions. Same thing with school psych and our nurse, so maybe a few hours added where needed, but we wouldn't have to have additional people. We would have to probably add a behaviorist and a speech and language pathologist. But overall, we think the cost for us to run it would be $250,000. So if you look, that would be $100,000 a year savings through 23-24. We're saving money, or if we have less students, then we would break even, or we could reassign the teacher, or we would have more flexibility to do that. So this agenda item is to ask you to allow us to continue to work with VCOE to explore these costs. We've had a conversation with them already. They're supportive of this. We usually have to give a year and a day's notice, so this wouldn't necessarily be effective next school year, but we'd like to negotiate with them around what this looks like. But still continue to provide great services for these kids.
For students who go to Boswell, would there be infrastructure needs that we don't currently have?
Maybe some, but I don't think so, because we're already serving students in
Similar.
Ojai teams. Yeah, so some things like our students at Boswell do community-based instruction, and so they go into restaurants or they do different programs. So we would have to develop those programs here, but we think that we would be able to serve them well here.
Would it also be housed at Nordhoff where Teams is?
Likely, yeah.
So you're looking for a motion to approve continued research on them?
Yeah, it seems innovative and creative, and I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Good idea.
thank you. Summit School 2020-2021 school year proposal. Do you want to make your presentation first? We do have 1 speaker on this topic.
Let me do the speaker first.
All right. Kimberly Rivers.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. For the record, my name is Kimberly Rivers, and I'm here just as an individual, regardless of any other groups I'm affiliated with. I have a 1-page document that I'm going to submit, and this was actually the proposal that was sent out Friday evening with the agenda originally. And my comment is actually a question that I would like the board members to ask of staff during the proposal about why the proposal that's being presented tonight is different than what was sent out Friday night. And for the record, for people at home and in the audience, I'm going to just read a paragraph that was included on the document that went out Friday and is not on the proposal that's before you tonight. It's at the end, and it just says social and academic enrichment. In addition to teaching the core academic content, Summit School students may participate in up to 2 days per week of enrichment programming through Rock Tree Sky. Students may also participate in after-school classes, team sports, and extracurricular activities such as school dances at Matilaha Middle School and elective classes at Nordhoff High School. In parentheses, can high schoolers participate in certain sports at Nordhoff like track, ? And then it says, I know some sports like football are only available to Nordhoff students, but I've had inquiries about other sports and extracurriculars at Nordhoff, parentheses, period. And then so my first question is, why is that not part of what's the proposal that we're seeing tonight? And then a second question for board members is, I understand that this is part of an independent study program, and my understanding is that state law requires that all enrichment and extracurricular activities that are available to independent study students are available to all students throughout the district. And I'm asking if that is the case in this instance. Thanks so much, and you've got a lot of great stuff on the agenda. The district's doing great work. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
So I'll give the presentation. I'll start by saying that this is a Google document, and that comment at the end was included erroneously, the last comment about sports, but I'll answer the question about sports that we've been struggling with our independent study school since we started, and it's that in order for students in independent study school to participate in CIF sports at the comprehensive high school, our league has to agree to a multi-school agreement. We presented that for a vote to our league. We have the issue, a charter school has the issue, and we could not get enough votes for that to pass. So we do not currently have access for our independent study school students to play sports at Nordhoff High School because our CIF league, which includes Carpinteria, Wainimi, Santa Paula, Fillmore, and Oak Park, did not vote to allow us to do that.
So not just football, all sports.
Right, and just for the
All
record,
CIF
if they can vote and allow us to do it, and it doesn't mean that they're opening their own programs to that. They just allow our students at Independent Study School to participate at Nordhoff, and they voted not to do that.
So we've got a
particular
petition.
reason?
There's a lot of reasons that I'd be happy to explain later if you wanted to ask me about them.
Who is the decider on that at those different schools? Is it athletic director? Is it the principal?
In our league, typically in a CIF league, the principals vote, but in our league, the athletic directors vote.
It's disappointing.
It's, yeah.
Yeah, ACE Charter School, which is authorized by Oxnard Union High School District, has a similar issue in that they have, like, the kid who wanted to play water polo at Wainimi, and so Wainimi was pushing for it as well, because they have this issue in a particular student. I mean, it's like one student, it's not very many students, but we weren't able to do that, so.
How did they handle when Foothill was able to, those students were actually able to, was that because it was a new school without
But they're
any
not in
sports?
our district.
They were probably in a different league. So each league gets to vote on their own rules, and they get to vote if they want to allow particular schools. So, just because, say, for example, if we're allowed to do it, that doesn't mean that Fillmore has to let their students do it. And they're just saying we're letting you. So that's the issue with sports. But looking at the proposal in general, the idea, we've been running Ojai Independent at the Summit site, and we have been talking about potentially expanding that. So this proposal is to make Summit a K-12, TK-12, non-classroom based school. And it would be kind of flexible. The idea is it would mostly be homeschool from TK through 5, because that grade level is not really great candidates for independent study, but good for homeschool programming that's led with the parent at home. Working with one of our teachers, we call this a designated learning coach, but we could call them whatever we want to call them. And then in 6th through 12th, more independent study, although the parents could continue to homeschool and be the primary instructors as long as they wanted to. So really developing a personalized learning environment for every family that's there. They would be able to participate in enrichment programs, including Rock Tree Sky. Also, they could go to like CTE classes or elective classes at Matilaha or at Nordhoff, depending on if there's space and if they want to do that. So we would want to work with them to provide whatever enrichment classes are available to that family.
Would you mind if I just had that
Sure.
sheet? So
Yeah.
basically, part of that should still be on there, and part should.
Right.
Social and academic enrichment is not on here at all.
Yeah, that just got cut up. So we meant to delete
Oh, I
the
see.
last
Right,
sentence
right,
in
right,
the. So, do you have any questions, thoughts?
Well, in terms of the last question of if of the extracurricular activities open, or let's see, enrichment activities that the independent school students get.
Yeah. I don't know if that's true. I'll have to do some research and report back to the board on that.
I've
Yeah,
never
so
heard
the
that
idea would
before,
be
'cause
if some kids could go to Rock Tree Sky, then every kid would have to have that. I think, is that what you're thinking? That's your understanding?
Yeah.
Which, it would be interesting that that was the case, because I certainly don't, it's not happening right now, like kids at Miramar
Between
can't
the
go sign
schools.
up to the Spanish club at Topa Topa,
It's
so.
specific for independent study programs. So if you provide enrichment programs for independent study, then that same enrichment opportunity is supposed to be available for all students in the district if they want to do it, is my understanding.
I'll look into that.
My question is, this does not take over the independent study school. We would
Right.
still continue to have
Right.
independent study.
So Ojai Independent, which would be an item coming to you probably in March or April, would most likely shift to be on the Nordhoff campus. And students who, one of the things we found for the students who are doing Ojai Independent here at the district office is they need more face time with their teachers to be successful. So we would restructure that program probably on the Nordhoff campus in its own space. And likely having students meet with a teacher for an hour a day, 4 or 5 days a week. So just, we'll be bringing that back to you for a
And that's a
reconfiguration.
six to 12.
Yeah, it would likely not be for middle school students. So again, there will be a future proposal to redo that, but we won't be getting rid of that school, we'll just be reconfiguring it. But this will be the Summit program at Summit, non-classroom based, blended learning for whatever homeschool or independent study. whichever
So we
needs.
would have a teacher at Summit on campus who would meet with those students who are.
And we would have a principal over this school, Dawn.
Right. I'm confused when you said our independent students here, I thought they were all up at Summit.
No, we have some that attend here as well.
Okay.
I think 5, 4.
But there still are some up there.
Right. So Ojai Independent School has 2 resource centers, one here and one at Summit. But they're really different programs. And so when we started it, we weren't sure what that would look like. And now that we're 6 months into it, we can see that there's 2 different types of students.
Well, I'm for more flexible and online learning.
You've been talking about this for years.
Yeah, so it would be
Somebody finally said yes.
easy for me to move to approve the proposal.
I want to talk a little bit more. By the way, we've been, internally, occasionally, I've talked to Tiffany about, I love the idea of student centrism, and also love the idea of actually rubber hitting the road, meaning, more control by students, their families having more discretion. It feels to me that we have some sort of sticky rules that aren't really particularly helpful to anyone, but just rules. I agree with Dane. I love giving people more options and giving them more discretion, especially these days. On the enrichment front, talking about Rock Tree Sky, is because I think we don't like to vote on things if there's some dangling issue. Is that a crucial part of this proposal?
I think so. Because we don't have any other enrichment opportunities at that site, right? That is the current enrichment program that's available for students at that site.
Right.
So if you're just going there for homeschool, but if you don't want to go to Rock Tree Sky, that's okay too, but it's constructed so that those students have that access to that kind of experiential learning. And one of the things that we know in non-classroom based programs is that it's really important to have socialization. And if you're just meeting with your teacher, you're coming to campus to just meet on your teacher. If we weren't doing Rock Tree Sky, we would develop on our own a series of workshops, and students would sign up for workshops, and family would lead their workshops. That's typically how it works. And so we have kind of a ready-made program so that we don't have to do all of that workshop development.
Well, that's what I'm saying is if we were to vote in favor of this now, and then learn that in fact we would have to be providing that same opportunity for students throughout the district, which might make it cost prohibitive or whatever, we have a plan B that we could offer that or create our own.
We would bring something back to
Okay.
you.
I think though, since this, even the part that we meant to keep that is not here, I wouldn't mind bringing it back just for a formal action
I
with
can
the
type it in
correct,
right now if you want.
um,
I mean, you can approve, that language was in the original and it meant to say that, but we can,
I guess I do have that concern about the enrichment program, finding out whether there is that, unless you remove Rock Tree Sky. So that it's not, students will be provided an enrichment program.
What would be, Tiffany, the outcome if we were to, in an abundance of caution, on an issue of giving proper notice of an issue that's obviously of interest to some people in particular up at Summit, to bring it back? I mean, would that be devastating to have to bring it back in March?
we're hoping to start enrollment now so that we can do our staffing projections. As you know, March 15th is a looming deadline for staffing projections, so it's helpful. The more enrollment we know, the more we can think about what our budget numbers look like.
Could we add in, so then my question becomes, proper agendizing wise, right? If this was there, when was it changed, and is it okay to add something? I guess it's okay to add something.
You just make a
It's an
motion
action.
including the original language minus the last sentence. So your motion would be to approve the proposal, including the language from Friday's agenda item minus the last sentence, or however you'd like, or you could even read those words if you want.
And if we find out there is a problem,
Then I'll bring it
It
back
can
to you
come
in
back
March
Then
and
we
we'll
could
have
modify it.
have another,
Modify, okay.
right, because we would still have the program and we
We would
we
just-
could enroll, it would just look different in a workshop model or something like
but
that.
it would allow us to move forward with enrollment.
Yeah, I would say as I think about other districts that have independent study schools and there's lots of things that they do that aren't the same, no campus is the same, so just have to look into that and see what that looks like.
Well, I'm comfortable with adding the language back in, it was obviously published already, so it's not.
Minus the parentheses, so that
Yeah,
the
minus the notes.
last sentence would be, students may also participate in after-school classes, team sports, and extracurricular activities such as school dances until middle school and elective classes at Nordoff High School.
So you're making a motion that includes that language? Is that,
Sure.
okay.
I'll second it.
So to put that which was in the original, but then eliminate some of what was in there
Without
about all the sports
parenthetical.
stuff.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 But I
Thank
would
you.
like to hear back in terms of
Yeah,
the research. Thank you.
so Summit School is a school.
Oh, I did wanna mention, sorry, we're still on it, even though we voted on it. I know, some charter, the Valley Oak people are like, wait, is this gonna affect them because it's that's the homeschool program and we're adding a homeschool program. And, it's my impression from what I had talked to Andy, having these conversations a year or two ago, was that, the program in terms of curriculum that Valley Oak Charter offers is very parent-driven, like a parent, it can choose, we wanna have this program, it can be a religious program, it can be,
I
and
think
in
it
this
can't be
program.
religious.
It can't be, no,
Okay.
but it is
parents
parent
can
driven,
choose-
right?
But parents,
Ingenuity as well.
Yeah.
parents, okay, but parents often choose textbooks, their own textbooks?
Textbook approach,
Right.
so combined, there's an online component that's required because it's Common Core connected. But there is some choice in there. I believe your program is going to be offering that as well because Mr. Bailey's wife was on shopping in my library for materials. So I honestly think that, and I don't know a whole lot about the district's program because I just don't have that information. But on paper, it sounds like there is going to be a component that will be similar to ours. And that's, of course, district's option to do that. By the way, I think what Ms. Rivers was referring to is a section in Ed Code that says you cannot offer an incentive to a student in independent study that isn't available to students in the traditional classrooms. Now, I believe that is still part of the code.
So maybe in the future, some little information as we get there into what the curriculum looks like for the homeschool. I mean, my understanding, not my understanding, my thought as a parent, if you say, oh, you can homeschool, I would assume I have to do the same book that the second graders are doing at Topatopa,
kind
and
of
just
wrote
doing it at home.
that in
That's-
the, we
so-
wrote that in here. So we would be using state adopted curriculum, but there would be some flexibility in terms of supplemental and deciding on that. So as we've mentioned before, we found that the math book that works best for our independent study students is not the same math book that they're using in the comprehensive high school. So we have different books available, and it doesn't have to be the same. That's kind of the whole point of this program, is that you can have some flexibility, still within the state adopted model.
And it might be interesting, Cheryl, to think about some of that professional learning community stuff where the teachers are saying, these are the 18, whatever.
Power standard.
Power standards that that parents are aware of those. That it's sort of like,
Absolutely.
because maybe next year your child's gonna wanna go into the classroom.
That's
So
right.
we need to make sure that if you're homeschooling them, they're learning what all the other third graders are learning.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you, Jane. 7.3.4 is a resolution.
Point 3?
Oh, I skipped, I'm
Oh.
sorry. No, we'll go back to point 3. That's a good idea to go in chronological order. I agree. 7.3.3, 2020, summer school program proposal.
Yes, I'm very excited about this. In my last position, I was able to work with Learn for Life, which is the CMO, the Charter Management Organization for Vista Real. Vista Real is a non-classroom-based charter school that is out of Oxnard and has learning centers throughout the county. So they have a program where they partner with districts, and they essentially collect ADA for students during the summer. And then they partner with the districts to run summer school programs for kids. So we have money currently in our budget to run summer school, but it's limited by our finances and our ability to pay for it. This partnership allows us to have essentially expand our summer program to include enrichment, to include go-ahead classes, to include essentially whatever we think would be beneficial for students within the context of the summer environment. So the way it works is students register with Vista Real, so they complete an enrollment form with them. Vista Real collects the ADA. Vista Real hires our teachers at $50 an hour. So they're employed with them for the summer. We hire our principal, we pay our custodian, we pay the office manager, we pay the nurse, we pay whomever. They reimburse us for all of those fees, so we have a little budget that we work on with them to say, here's how much we think it's gonna cost. So the only thing they directly pay for is the teachers. They also provide us supplies and materials amount for each student that enrolls in the program.
Is it reimbursement at 100%?
Yeah. So we determine ahead of time what the budget is. So we might say our principals, the average salary for principals is X. There are 17 days of summer school. They're gonna work X number of hours. We agree they're gonna reimburse us that much, and they, at the end of all of the accounting, send us a check for that
So
amount.
agreed beforehand.
Yeah, so we agreed beforehand.
It's not limitless.
Right.
Hey, reimburse us.
So we agree,
We put in a swimming pool.
right. So our proposal is that we would partner with them to have a summer program from July 1st to July 24th. And we are able to have elementary, middle school, and high school, which we're really excited about, so we can do some really fun things. We could potentially do credit recovery, but we could also have electives, we could do career exploration, we could do reading courses, we could have environmental studies, we could have whatever we think we would like to do, and we create the course, we have a course code, and we would give the students credit for the appropriate course. So the way that we ran, we called them career camps in my last position, and we had probably 70 different career camps that we ran throughout the county, and the students got credit for career exploration. So the same class title, but then they're doing different things. Maybe they're doing theater, or they're doing cooking, or they're doing, so it's essentially 17 days. We can have the elementary and middle school programs be 3 hours, and the high school could be 4 hours, so that we could get the right number of credit hours in for our high school students, but 4 hours is a little long for elementary and middle school.
I'm just curious how Vista Real can do this better than we can.
So you can collect ADA for 3 out of 4 quarters.
Oh, right.
And so
we're
so they
already
enroll
doing it.
in a
Got it.
different LEA
Got it,
for the
got
fourth
it.
quarter. So it's
Yep.
essentially a year-round calendar function.
I heard that
Um,
somewhere, but
yeah.
I didn't put that together.
So
We
this,
can do it, but we wouldn't get any ADA.
right,
Right.
if we do it, we pay for it. So not only does this offset our current funds that we have identified in the budget for summer school, it allows us to hire staff. Our custodians can get an extra 3 weeks in during July, making them 12-month-ish employees. Opportunities for potential administrators in our district who want to try out some administrative opportunities if they want to grow in that area. So we're proposing to have a site at Topa, a site at Miramani, and then Matilaha, because it's under construction, all the Matilaha students would be on one part of Nordhoff, and then the high school would be on another part of Nordhoff. So we'd kind of spread that out. Probably one principal over both sites, but we could have 2.
Is there a minimum number of enrollment?
They would like 20 to 25 students in each class. We would run a class at 20. At less than 20, the class probably wouldn't fly. So if you were to approve this tomorrow or potentially Friday, we would send out a flyer or like a Google form to all of our teachers and our staff and say, what would you like to teach? And they would write a little proposal. Cheryl and I would look through the classes. We would help identify, work with the principals, set up a catalog essentially, and then hopefully have registration by the end of the month available for
By
families.
the end of February.
Well, it's ambitious, but
That's ambitious. I'm impressed.
Couple of questions. Why July? I mean, how did you pick the?
because it's the
dates?
fourth quarter.
Oh,
So we don't get to pick the days. We can pick how many days. So we could go if we wanted July 1st through whatever the end date in July is that's on that Friday. But our typical summer school is around the same number of days.
Yeah,
So
so it usually starts like the week after
Right. Yeah.
school. That's why I was wondering.
That's-
It's like, are teachers gonna go, not July?
that's the one component of working with this program is you don't get to choose when it starts.
And why the 1st versus the 6th with the holiday in
Because we
there?
were trying to get 17 days in, and so, we either had to go later or earlier, and we decided, so we're choosing between 20 and 17 days, and that's how.
The one
Yeah.
thing, I heard that, set off that thing in my head from the Matilaha 6th grade experience was when you hear about younger kids being on the same campus with older kids. Obviously, we just wanna make sure that we properly
Yeah.
segregate and make sure that we have adequate measures and people so that it's safe.
Yeah.
My other question was, is this open to non-Ojai Unified
No.
students? So if you go to Oak Grove, you can't come to the same
Right.
school?
The credit recovery, how many high school credits would they get for this?
It's the same number of hours as whatever so they typically get 5?
Yeah, it would be like a semester course
Yeah.
that they're
So it
taking,
would
like
be a
5
semester
Yeah.
course.
So that's why they go
So
longer.
because there's a lot of students who, over the summer, take, for example, a language course in order to open up an elective period during the school year. And I hear a lot of kids really want sign language. So I'm wondering if this would qualify, if you did this over the summer for 4 years, if that would be your 2 years of
Potentially get 20
language.
credits.
Yeah, partially it has to do with how we transcript it. There's some complications on the back end about transcripting these classes and how we, the back end of Q for marking them, but there's some data things, but I think potentially we could do that.
Okay, that would be my question. And I thought I had heard you say at one point teachers could be community members as well.
Right, so I have that on here. The great thing about career and technical education is that qualifying for a credential is based on your experience. So if we have community members who are really excited about something and they meet the experience, they could apply for a career and technical education credential, which is about $125 plus fingerprinting. They could teach for 3 years. They would technically have to clear that credential through the county office or through another program, which is about, if you're not a teacher, I think it's about $2,000 and it's a process. Or they could teach for 3 years and say that was a lovely experience, which we have many people do in the community as well. So we could work with people who wanted to teach something that didn't currently have a teaching credential. Obviously, we'd provide them a lot of additional support in the structure of teaching, but we have a lot of people who work with our kids already. They're just not necessarily credentialed teachers, but could do those extension programs into the summer.
I can tell you already, Matilla students are very interested in the cooking class.
Yes, we talked about that at elementary as well.
I hear sewing is really
Sewing.
popular as well.
Yeah. So if
They
we don't
really
have,
want our home ec back, is
Yeah.
what it sounds like.
so if we don't have the teachers, we could recruit within the community to fill those spots.
Okay. And with that, it would essentially cost $150 plus fingerprinting. Would that be a district cost, and could it be
haven't-
offset through this?
Potentially.
Okay.
I'll move to approve, right? I'll move, is it a motion, an action item?
It is.
Yeah.
It's an action
I'll
item.
move to approve a 2020 summer school program proposal with Mr. Real.
I'll second.
And can we say Learn for Life because of the broader charter
Yes, sorry,
management?
Learn for
I know
Life.
it says Vista Real here, but Learn for Life will,
Learn for life.
yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That sounded very exciting. I'm
Really excited
very
about it.
excited about that.
We had, my last job when I left last summer, I think we had 750 kids in the county who were participating in programs. And that was the first year we'd expanded to middle school, and the middle school kids, it was magical. They had so much fun. We went on field trips and did all these great things, and parents were really excited because kids had something
Yes.
productive to do that was,
Oh,
free.
and my question was about timing too. If there's a potential to have a morning class and an afternoon class,
potentially.
different.
If we can figure it out. Our principals are in the budget currently, I think we're paying them for 8 hours. So they'll be there all day, so we might be able to stack it up, depending on, what the
Interest level.
interest and teacher availability. There's a lot of details that go into making this actually
Yeah.
happen.
And middle school it's so hard to find things for middle school kids during the summer, so
Yeah.
I think it would be great for our community. 7.3.4 is the resolution in recognition of Women's History Month. And so I will go ahead and read the resolution. Whereas women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made significant and historic contributions to the growth and strength of our society in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, fighting not only against sexism, but also against many intersecting forms of discrimination, including discrimination based upon race, ethnicity, class, disability, sexual orientation, veteran status, and many other categories. And whereas women have played and continue to play critical roles in the economic, cultural, and social spheres of our nation's life by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working in and outside of the home, as well as providing the majority of the nation's volunteer labor force, and have been particularly important in the establishment of early philanthropic and cultural institutions in the country, I think it's supposed to say. And whereas women of diverse backgrounds have served as leaders in the forefront of progressive social change, not only to secure their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but to abolish slavery, promote fairness, equality, and safety in the workplace, and advance the modern civil rights movement, which create a more equitable and just society. And whereas despite these contributions, the role of women in history has been overlooked and undervalued in the past, though its significance is now emerging and assuming its rightful place as an important part of the body of American and world history. And whereas the leadership of women in elected office, including our own school board, Ventura County Office of Education School Board, our representatives serving in the California State Senate and Assembly, as well as our representatives in both houses of Congress, serves as an example of community and civic engagement for girls and women in our district. Therefore, it is fitting and proper that the Ojai Unified School District Board of Education proclaims the month of March 2020 Women's History Month and encourages all district schools to commemorate this occasion with appropriate instructional activities. Do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
How appropriate.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And it's
And I
nice
was-
to do these in advance rather than halfway through the month.
Right, that is true. I was gonna turn to Angie and find out what we were gonna hear from her class. but I
I thought that too.
7.4.1, Public Library Partnership Proposal.
Okay, so this is in the very, very, very early stages, so we don't have a lot of details. This is another item that's brought before you with the idea of a motion to allow us to continue exploration. The library in Miners Oaks has been located in their facility for quite some time, but it appears that they may be losing their lease in the future. One option that the county, and we have been discussing is the potential of relocating that library onto the Miners Oaks school campus. This is a pretty common model. When I was a middle school teacher, every middle school in my town had a public library on it. And I know it could raise some potential security concerns, but those are mitigated in the design of the project. The county library currently partners with the school district in Piru and also in Oak Park. So our idea would be to take the current library at Miners Oaks. We would have to do some, redo some fencing so that it would be, so the school is essentially closed off to the public. So you can still access the library, but not the rest of the school campus. We would take the current library and probably the room behind it and make one an adult section and one a student section with doors that could be closed off, so that if we needed to separate the two populations, we could. We would have to add a restroom in one of those, probably in the adult section, because there isn't one currently, but there is plumbing there. So the value is that it helps to cement Miners Oaks School's place as the center of that community. It allows us to share resources with the library, so we would have a much bigger book collection than we currently have for our students. And we would be able to share resources in terms of the librarian staffing. So we would have, between their librarian and our librarian, we could keep the library open more hours.
So is there a possibility of expense sharing as well?
Yeah, so that would be part of the next steps of the proposal would be, if you approve this, to get costs and what the retrofit of the library would be, to work with the library and the county to see. It sounds like potentially they have some funds available for these types of projects that would help with that, the retrofitting of that, and then to bring that back to you.
What about, because I'm greedy, what about space rental, utility sharing, that kind of thing? Is that
I
typically?
know that we talked about that. Yeah.
I'm for it, but I'm unclear as to why it requires an action.
Just-
Because you can explore anything you want to explore.
Well, in this agenda, I've been bringing things for exploration so that we don't do a lot of work on a project that you ultimately don't support. So just to make sure that you're supportive of us spending time, staff time, because the next step is for me to go and say to Alan, go get a bunch of bids on this. And if it's not something that you support, then we don't want to be having our partners bidding on something that we're not intending to do.
Well, I think before we, bid on it, I would like to see, because I do have concerns about being, open to the public during a school day. So I would like to see what that looks like, what would the.
So what we've talked.
Where is it on the campus? Because I don't even, I have a sense, but I haven't, as a sense is like back and over. So how do you open, if it's at the front of the school by the office, I could see that it's pretty central in the campus right now.
It's kind of in the back, and it backs up nicely to the current parking lot that's on that side of school.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Right,
so
right.
it actually has perfect parking to be able to pull down there, and
So the other side is the computer lab.
Yeah,
That's
so
the
you
side
would
I'm thinking
enter
of, yeah.
through the gates on that side that are right there next to the parking. We've talked preliminarily about, when we say public access, what does that mean? Do we still have preschool reading groups on campus during the day? And we would love to have preschoolers on campus during the day at our school site, right? But how do we still serve the senior population, and what does that look like? And we would probably have limited hours, for example, seniors, but we would maybe do preschool reading. And so public is broad, but we would separate out specific groups of folks and times that would be appropriate for them to be on campus. And we would
because
model
that's
this.
also where everyone walks to go to the cafeteria.
Yeah, and we would model this off of the Oak Park model and the Piru model and the places where they're already doing this.
And I think, the library in Miners Oaks has homework help in the afternoon. And so to have it right there on campus would be huge.
Well, I like the idea of preserving a community resource. I like the idea, as you mentioned, of making Miners Oaks more integral to the community as well. I mean, the school itself, I like this idea. I'd be interested in what we could do with it.
I think the obvious thing is, again, safety.
Sure.
Do we have a motion to,
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 7.4.2 is the facility license agreement with Rock Tree Sky, and it looks like we have one speaker card, Bob Daddy.
Good evening. This facility has been batted around for a long time, and there certainly is a need to have education opportunities for children. And it appears that at this time, I think the best option is to go with Rock Tree Sky and give a little bit of certainty for a time and allow parents certainty. One thing that resonated with me was when your superintendent said, "Hey, March, we got to start doing this for March. We can't wait till this time. We got to load 6 months up," and we do have to load 6 months up, and you've got to be way out in front of it. And so I said before, had this facility been there, I probably would have sent my son there. What my point was on the 7-Eleven committee was, we have bond money, a couple of them up there. We have taxpayer money. And so my main interest on that 7-Eleven had to do with protecting the taxpayer and the bond owners. Didn't have anything to do with what was going to go on with the education, how it was going to be. Whenever you have 100 kids up there, you have some interest. And I think the most important thing is freedom of choice, where they have the freedom of choice. If it doesn't offer the opportunity and the choice and the needs, they won't be there. And so I think what happens is the success or failure can actually be counted by numbers. So I think a decision needs to be made soon so there can be some certainty and there has to be prep time. And I still hope that Mr. Dutter is going along with that $500,000 worth of bond money upgrades and improvements and deficiency that we have up there, and we'll spend that money and get that thing and get that campus up to speed. Regardless of what happens, we're gonna want a roof for 20 years, we need to put it on. So anyhow, that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this license agreement is not substantially different from the one you've seen. All of the terms are the same, except the length of time is for 3 years instead of 1 year, beginning at the end of this school year for 3 years beyond.
I'll move to approve.
Well, I just want
I'm
to
sorry.
briefly, I've been reassured that sorry, Jim, but, I'm cheap, like, who else up here said they're cheap? You said you were.
He said greedy, but.
Greedy. That we're getting, that the amount of money that we're getting in return for the what we're providing, and I recognize it remains a license, which is different obviously than a fee simple. But anyway, I have been reassured that at least you, Tiffany, believe it's the appropriate amount, so.
Yeah, we did some cost per square foot comparisons when we brought this to you before, which I don't have in front of me, but that's how we set the fee, was by looking at what kind of what you would comparatively pay in a cost per square foot, and we mapped out all the costs we went through that. I'm sorry I didn't bring it, but that's how we got to this number.
And I looked at it very closely, because I don't trust you, Jim. I wanted to make sure it's not Canadian. So, these are US dollars.
I am a fan of Rock Band Rush, which is from Canada, but I don't use the standard American system.
Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to deal with
Yeah.
that issue. And the fact that it remains a license.
Right. So it's 3 year, but either party could cancel
Right.
at any time.
Right.
If that's all, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Approval of resolution 19/2016 in support of Prop 13, which we have talked about a couple of times already tonight. Do you want to
We
say
can skip
anything
that.
more? Tiffany, did you want to say
No,
anything more?
I don't,
Okay.
I said my piece
Okay.
on this.
I only want to say, I wish these resolutions were just short and just stuck to the thing. Because I disagree with a lot of the internal language, but I'm supportive of it generally because I think it'll help our district, so.
Good strike language if you wanted to in the motion.
It's not worth
Okay.
I was like, wait, I thought this was the bond measure. It's like, oh yeah, you have, even the title, you have to go on.
Right.
Yeah, this is an incredibly unfortunately named and numbered proposition. I read an article that said when they got the number, they were like, any number about Prop
Right.
13. And it's problematic because there's a lot of misinformation, and it's even when you read the title, it's unclear that this is different than the other one that's coming in November. They sound vaguely similar.
Yeah, the help
Um,
rate, yeah.
Right.
So there's a messaging and a marketing issue for sure.
So we're doing our darndest to clear up any misconceptions about this. Do we have a resolution? I mean, a
I'll move
motion?
I'll move to approve the resolution on Prop 13.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Measure J update.
The emergency modification we put at the end of.
Yeah,
December.
it's the last one.
Mhm.
Wonder if we should adjust that emergency to, I see Bill Wyrick sitting in the back of the room.
Sure.
You guys stayed until 10:30 last night.
Yeah.
I did.
I watched it on
I
TV.
mean, Ellen and Adam has been sitting here too. I think we're okay. Sorry.
It's all right, no problem.
Go ahead.
All right, so we have a few things for you guys tonight, obviously. We'll just run through then the update real quick. I will say the only incorrect item on here, Bob Daddy left, is the Summit Roofing. It is not advertised yet. We did have a vendor registry issue with, which is where we post all of our jobs. That was solved this afternoon, so it'll be up in the next day or two.
I'll just pause and say vendor registry is a program that we use to make sure that we advertise and follow the correct bid procedures. It was under Maggie Rogers' name, Maggie left, and we were unclear that
Locked out,
vendor
yeah.
registry went down. So we've had a little bit of a pause on all of our projects for the moment, but we believe we have the problem solved. So,
Oh, he's back.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, it's not posted, but it will be. So, and I was actually just talking to Jim in the back in terms of timing for the roof as well. So, but that is on our radar. The library.
Are you hoping to do that, I'm sorry, over the summer? The summer?
Actually, Jim and I were just talking in the back, and he's game to start right away. If we need to move some kids, or if he needs to move some kids, he can. There's also potential for the spring break week, so we'll see. Spring break is ideal for him, but he's willing to do it right away, so, which is great. The library is humming along. I mean, the quad is moving along. The library though is going very well. Everybody's super impressed, and it very well could be done very quick, way ahead of schedule. So
Tony Baca is is the local contractor
Yeah.
that is doing the library, and our
DSA inspector, our project inspector that we hire, has been really impressed with Tony's work and because he didn't know him ahead of time. He says, I've never worked with him, but he's come back and said that, you know, this guy's sharp, he's on it. And he's the RFI king. If he has any questions, he sends it in. In contrast, the quad guy is moving along at a snail's pace, but we're poking him hard, hopefully get things wrapped up here very soon. He does no paperwork. Yeah, but that's.
Every time we get together with Tony Bach on the library, we joke, you know, April's coming up. You got to be, you know, be nice when you're done in April. So, and it's a good laugh. But I mean, he very well could be done well ahead of schedule. So, the Nordoff F-wing drainage is we have everything out to administration there as well as the NPA. We're supposed to discuss that on Friday. We have some exciting plans there. We're just kind of looking for some colors and, you know, kind of design what everybody's kind of feeling. Dave Munson, the NPA as well. We gave our recommendations, and then we'll take that back in, what they say, and then kind of make a decision in terms of, you know, overall aesthetics, overall plan for Nordoff, cost, everything.
And I could pause and say, it's not just drainage, but that entire F-wing, making that really our protected drop-off zone. So we'll have benches, we'll have bollards to protect from potential vehicle accidents. So it's a lot more than drainage. We're making that essentially the main drop-off zone at the high school through this project.
Circle, by the bus circle?
Just down from there,
Yeah.
It started out as a drainage issue because
Yeah.
it's all,
Yeah. So it's both a campus safety improvement, it's a quality improvement so that kids can sit there while they're waiting for rides and they don't have to
exactly
stand around. So.
And it protects them a
Yes.
little bit should a 16-year-old's foot slip or something,
Yeah.
you know, so all of the above, so. The dining hall is moving along. They are pouring Monday
Monday or Tuesday, yeah.
and they're pouring how much concrete?
90 yards of concrete for the foundation and footings.
So that's,
It's a big room, I was by there the other
10
day.
truckloads.
yeah, so I think that's, Monday, so if anybody wants to come out and watch, that'll be fun to see, so. We got a couple things going on at the gym still. The Miners Oaks Playground, we're looking into just DSA accessibility issues, what that might, if we put in a new playground, what that might entail.
Adam, can I back up and talk
Yeah.
about the Matilaha fencing? So one of the things as we look at our campus safety is that the back of Matilaha that backs up to Ojai Avenue has no gate. So you can enter the campus at any point from the street, and we can't see the back of the campus from the office. So we want to pull out, there's a little weird, I don't even know what the curve spot. We want to pull that gate out, make that gate make it flush, and then have a solar operated timed pedestrian and bike gate, so that it opens at whatever time, 6:30.
Right.
It locks at 8:30 when kids are in class. I'm making up the times, obviously. Locks when kids are in class. It's locked during the day, and then it unlocks automatically at the end of the day.
Yeah,
and
'cause
any
it's
time
used-
that we set it.
It's used a lot, obviously, during pickup and drop-off.
Yeah.
Everybody parks on Country Club and Coldwell Banker and all of the above, so it's important that it stays open, but yeah, it'd be nice to eliminate that turnout as well as kind of seal up that fence.
Well, and students who take the trolley.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So having it automated so that it happens and nobody has to lock and unlock it, but that way we have additional safety during the day from accessing on that back side of campus. And
At
it's,
holidays, it's nice, that- like 4th of July, a lot of people use the field to.
Absolutely.
so we can set it to unlock and lock.
Yeah.
Can I
The,
go
and,
back also to the Matilaha gym?
yeah, absolutely.
The flow,
Path of travel?
path of travel, thank you. Can you explain what that is? And also the blinds, why do we need blinds in the gym?
So I'll touch on the blinds real quick and then Alan can jump.
Yeah.
You know why you need
If you watch
blinds,
a
right?
basketball game, you know they need blinds.
Go to Saturday afternoon
It's
basketball
5
game.
o'clock, watch a
Yeah.
basketball game, you don't know why.
It's a little tough. So we are actually meeting with the blinds people, these same blinds people, next Wednesday.
The problem is
So-
they're curved, right?
They're curved and it offers a lot of challenges. Do we put up something that's up all the time? Do we put something on like a motorized that can go up and down? So there's a lot of options
We want to
we're trying to
retain the
work.
light in the gym, but
Exactly.
also not have it blinding for when you're trying to
Plus,
play
those windows
basketball.
open for ventilation, we
Right.
can't
Right,
put them
you
right
wanna-
up next to it,
Right.
you gotta leave it back set, so.
Yeah.
So it's a complicated project, these blinds.
And
but-
the,
But
and
it
the-
is
and the
necessary.
the desire for the light, I assume, precludes, you know, some kind of a covering, some kind of, you know, dark sunglass like covering on the glass.
If
Yeah.
you remember, those were painted closed before we
I
replaced them.
remember that, yeah.
And so, we put tinted windows in there, they have a tinting on them,
Oh.
but that was as much as we could do, without going to a thicker glass that then would have changed the weight load, and so then we had to go PSA and all kinds of problems, so.
Naturally.
We did what we could, we knew we probably would have to do
Yeah.
blinds, but we took a wait and see approach.
Well, it doesn't have to be
It's-
up against, I mean, you think about, like, in my backyard, I have one of those little rolling, you know,
Yeah.
rolls.
Exactly.
It's way
Yeah.
away from
Yeah,
my
it could be
window,
back,
but-
it could be
yeah,
offset.
Just can be
And
on
is
a
it
motorized.
just one side of the gym then?
It is.
So trying to do that without ruining the look and.
Right.
Right.
It's a big
Okay.
project.
We
Thank
could
Yeah,
hand
because
out
the coaches,
sunglasses.
the
I
PE
think
classes
that's
really
great.
do appreciate the
morning
amount of lighting
sun.
in there now.
Mm-hmm.
So of natural
Yes,
lighting.
I've heard
So
that.
that's nice during the
Very
school
good.
day, but yeah,
Just put a
basketball, it's
movie
been a little
screen
rough.
in that you pull down.
I've been, I've been told by numerous parents on our soccer and baseball
I was
teams.
texting you one morning.
Yes,
Where are
and-
the
and-
blinds
and-
at the top?
So, and then the path of travel, actually, you can touch on.
Okay, so on the path of travel on the back side of the gym, there's existing concrete was lifted up by a palm tree that's no longer there because we took it out. And so in order to certify the complete project that we did on that, will be inspected and they'll look at the path of travel. So we need to correct that concrete at the back of the gym, which is the entrance to the boys' locker room, on that path. And also around the front of the gym, it's not compliant, the slopes are wrong, and there's a big gutter that's built into the concrete there. So we're gonna redo that area of concrete, and we're gonna take out the planters that are there on both sides of the gym and at the front of the gym, just so that there's concrete that goes right up against the building. We don't need those planters, they don't serve any useful purpose, they're a place for kids to hide, they're just sort of problematic, so we're gonna take those out and bring
So
concrete
none of
right
that
up
was
front.
in the original scope?
No.
No. And what we found as well, to Alan's point, without taking out the planters next to the building, is during the few rains we have had since we had the new roof, we capture all that water now. And so it comes, racing off the roof into the oversized gutters and then down the downspouts, and we're washing dirt across the brand new concrete and stuff and asphalt around the locker rooms. So this will allow us to send the water, clean water, down to where it needs to go and not have dirt running across as the kids try to go into the locker room, so.
So this is not in the front by the parking, or by the drop off?
You would see it
Not
from
on the stairs,
Not on the stairs, but to the right of the stairs.
right as you enter the
Cause
gym.
there's those storage areas in the gym, which are disgusting, and those windows are kind of bizarre, and
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, if you pull out that area, then the kids are gonna,
It's those planters that wrap around the front there.
yeah. I mean,
So-
does that cause any issues with those windows? There's some that don't look like they
It
close
could,
all the way.
but it could. When we took out some of the vegetation there, though, there were other issues besides the windows, so it's probably the lesser of the two evils right now. So, any other questions on the Mattel Hall gym?
I was happy to see the glass get replaced.
We thought you would be. Another thing, that just wasn't in the original scope, but that'll be done actually next week.
Is that in the
So-
locker rooms?
Yes.
The skylights.
The skylights,
It
yeah.
was all so
I know,
perfect, and
it
then
was
there was like this.
Yeah, and then you look up,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well,
So-
you'll also be seeing an item in the future about the floor that we kind of talked about a little bit, that there's an issue with the floor and the concrete and the inability to clean the floor properly in the locker room, which is
Yeah.
kind of gross. So
Well, it's
that'll
like
be,
the surface type?
Yeah.
yeah, it's like porous
Yeah.
So
concrete. and-
Rectification was a paint, I'm sorry, it
Go ahead.
was a paint with sand, like
Yeah.
a sanded paint.
So
And
it's
so you
not
get some
slippery.
traction, you
Yeah.
get some coefficient of friction for, so no slipping into the wet locker room. And that part's fine, except that it accumulates dirt from people's shoes and walking in and other things. And you can't clean it properly, you can't clean it with a mop, you can't clean it with a squeegee. There also, a lot of the concrete that's original, because we didn't replace all the concrete in there, the slopes are wrong, there's hills and valleys in it that create puddles and things, so we're gonna put some self-leveling concrete in there, and so it's all level, and then redo the floor with epoxy. So it'll have a friction to the epoxy. But
Like the kind you put in the little kitchen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly like that.
So that, then we can clean
Yeah.
the floors in the locker room, which seems like a pretty
That
good
was,
idea.
yeah.
the alternative is to buy a several $1,000 machine that will power wash it and walk behind.
Right. So we're looking at the epoxy options and colors, so, which could be fun, so. So that'll be coming to you probably next month, actually. San Antonio's moving along. We should have that submitted to resubmitted to DSA shortly. And we're actually moving along with the lunch shelter because we're so close on the parking lot. We'll follow in with the lunch shelter, and it shouldn't be an issue. Touched on Summit and the Miners Oaks, the last DSA issue. We are waiting on one ADA sign with a left arrow. That is it. And then they'll bless that project and sign it off. We put in the new domes, and our inspector, the DSA regional guy, he's happy with it, so we are this close, so it's great. And then just some potential summer projects. We got some asphalt projects we're looking at. We are full steam ahead on some of the Nordoff pool repairs. We are, as well as the rooftop HVAC units on the top there. We're currently going around and doing an evaluation on all the rooftop units. Some of the info we had was kind of spotty, so we are going around and doing a full kind of workup on every AC unit on the campus, make, model, serial number, everything in current condition, and then we'll kind of do triage as terms of what rooftop units need to be done. So everybody keeps saying topa, but we'll see. So that's it for the update. Any questions on the update?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. I think the next thing is the solar.
Yes. Next thing is solar, 7.4.5, but we have two speakers who would like to speak on
Okay.
that topic, so we will hear from them first.
Okay.
Bob Daddy.
Is it possible to hear the presentation so I can be more informed as to what they have to say?
We can do that. Sometimes it's easier to hear what your questions are so the presentation
Sure.
can address those. So, it can go either way.
I'd like to have an opportunity to hear the presentation because it's slated for 20 minutes.
Okay.
And I'm working on a pretty big solar project now and have been for quite a while, so I would like to see what this involves and how it comes together before I even say anything. Half the things I may say may be covered that, is a waste of everybody's time, so I'd really like to have the presentation first. Thank you.
That's fine.
I'm good with that too.
Okay. Then
Adam, or Alan, I'm sorry, do we have two presentations or just one? Two PowerPoints or one?
There are two PowerPoints, but one is only one on solar and the other one is on the ATP.
Okay.
So this will be,
I,
do we
let's-
have, usually there's a little pointer that's. here.
Well, I'm your pointer, so you
Okay.
just tell me and I'll
All right.
flick the slides
All right.
for you. And hopefully this is the right one for you.
It is.
Okay.
So I've been really interested in and done a lot of research based for solar power for the district. And I've looked at the 5 proposals that we've received over the last 3 years from 5 different vendors. And I've done a consolidation of those, kind of taking the best of them to get an understanding. Because what I wanted to be able to do was for OUSD to be able to define the scope of the project that we would then put out to an RFP for people to bid on, as opposed to 5 different vendors coming in and saying, this is what we think you need and here's how much it should cost. And so that's what we did. So then I took those and I accumulated those into what we thought was the right scope of work. And then I called the vendors together and got them all in the same room, along with some other experts like an architect and a person that worked with the grants and that for getting battery power. And we brainstormed in that room to come up with some ideas and say, I said, here's what I saw in the 5 proposals I looked at, but what do you guys think as professionals? You guys are the ones that are doing this every day. And we got some really great feedback from them. It was a wonderful meeting. Everybody opened up, and it wasn't like they were holding back because it was proprietary. I told them, I don't want to know about your prices. I just want to know what's the idea. What are we looking at for scope here? And we came up with a great program. So this analysis takes those things into consideration. We're going to look at 7 slides, one for each location, and we'll talk a little bit about each one of those. Just to give you the parameters, we assembled these from those 5 vendors. The scale of the system would be equal to 90% of what we are using today. Battery backup systems are not included in the proposal because we're looking at grants to pay for that if we would decide to do that. So we're looking at it that way. And the
Can
savings.
I just quickly ask the rationale for 90%?
They don't want you, the SCE doesn't want you to oversize your system so that you're becoming
I
part
know
of,
for
becoming a competition with them.
residential, that's the case, but for school districts, that's also the case.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, that's what we're told. So that's what we're going by that. And that's what virtually every vendor, put in their thing. So the savings are based on the current cost of electricity, and we saw a chart earlier about electricity costs are going up, and we all know that's gonna happen. Just some things to think about when we look at solar. The timeline for a typical solar, from the time we sign a contract, and we've gone through all of the preliminary stuff, it's 10 to 14 months, and that's largely dependent upon DSA approval and some other permitting approvals. We would be involved in DSA for every school except for San Antonio. We believe that we should look at a best value analysis of the contracts as opposed to the lowest bid. And that's something else we can talk about in the future. But in order for us, this board has decided that we use the low bid as the method for determining awarding contracts. And it requires that this board authorize a best value designation to award the bid if going forward. So that's something we can talk about in the future.
It'll be on the March agenda.
Yeah. And there should be a separate contract for operation and maintenance that would be negotiated apart from the cost of the system and the installation. It would probably be the same vendor, but that should be different because the way that the operation and maintenance contracts that I saw in the proposals didn't really fly with what I would think of as how they should look. And one of the reasons is they say, well, we're going to say operation and maintenance contract should be X dollars, and we're going to increase it 3 or 4% every year for the next 20 years. And I'm saying, well, if we buy the system and put it in, and I could see where you'd have an operational and maintenance expense that might be a little higher the first 2 years as you're sort of tweaking it, but from years 3 to 7, you don't have to do anything but keep them clean, and then at year 7 or 8, you might start to be replacing inverters and do some expensive things. So I'd rather see a contract that says, this is what we think it's going to be year by year than just taking a factor and adding money to it. So that's that. So if we can go to the next. So here we go.
On to each site, I have 2 questions. I noticed on all the sites, it's the shade solar. There's no just on the ground or on the roofs.
We did a combination of carports, shade structures, and ground units.
Okay.
And I'll explain that as we go
So if
through
you'll
it.
explain why you chose that
Right.
way versus
Yeah,
some
and I'll
of the
say
roofs.
one of our considerations is if we can get more value by adding shade, which all of our campuses desperately want. So if we're gonna install solar, and if there's a way to do that and allow that to also provide shade for our campuses, we wanted to consider it in this proposal, so that's.
Right.
That was
The downside of shade structures or carports is that they cost more. It costs more to raise it up, but it uses an awful lot of real estate. It just really bugs me from a waste standpoint to use the real estate to park a solar structure that you've got to protect from being damaged, and you can't use that real estate for anything else when you could use it for shade or that. So that's my personal bent.
And then my other thing is when you start looking for actual people, I mean, but I know of 2 solar projects here in Ojai, and both of them had issues, and one of them was.
We've talked to both of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what was the deal with the?
Thatcher in the gym.
They never finished the project. They never hooked
They
it
went
up.
belly up.
Yeah, the club, the people at the athletic club they went out of business too.
Yeah.
We were talking to Ryan.
Yeah, and then I don't know the story to be true, but I had heard rumors about the Thatcher were having some issues, and the company they hired were out of Ohio.
Yeah.
It was like there was nobody locally to service it.
Yeah, they wouldn't
So-
service it, so California Solar ended up taking over that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so those are
And
just.
the athletic club actually got a second vendor in there, I guess, to finish the job.
So-
Talking to the GM over there, said it was a challenge.
So not only have we talked to them, we talked to other school districts that have done solar projects as well, because there are many lessons to be learned from the people who went before us in these projects. So we've talked to Oxnard L, Oxnard Union, a couple of, like Antelope Valley,
Oak Park.
about some of the ideas for putting this together.
And then one other question before you get into the actual, so we talked about solar a couple of years ago, and then last year Andy told us, well, we're gonna eliminate all the solar projects that we had on our Measure J, because now the Southern Cal has changed the high,
The timing
Peak
of
time
the,
rate,
of
right.
the cost of,
rates
yeah,
and all
yeah.
that. So now we're hearing back, so if you could just at some point cover why we're discussing it again, when
Yeah.
a year ago we heard we probably won't be looking at solar.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up, because it brings up an important point that the originally the solar was taken out of some of the Measure J budgets for the elementary schools in order to do things like pay for the dining hall at Matilahaw and some things like that. But there always was budget money for Matilahaw and for Nordoff that remained on the Measure J budget. But why we're doing it? The bottom line is money, right? We can save a couple $100,000 a year that we're paying to SCE right now, and
And we believe in renewable energy sources.
yeah, it's yes.
But to follow up on that question, because
World peace.
I don't know that there was clarity there, what changed in the last year?
When Andy was here, I talked to him about solar, and he said, I've looked at it, and there's a lot of different ways to go, and there's a lot to analyze and research, and he'd kind of exhausted his own temperament for it. But he said, if you're interested in it, go for it by all means, and bring me back a presentation.
So the money has been sitting there in the Measure J budget, so we have to at some point decide what we're gonna do
So
with it,
you don't feel like he fully explored all the options before it's time?
Yeah, I think he got to a point of frustration,
Yeah.
and
I
didn't,
don't,
yeah.
I just want to
And there were,
try to understand.
and when we came on board, there were bigger fish to fry right off the bat. I mean,
Right.
There was this, let's get the gym and the library and all
Yeah.
that going, and the dining hall, those were the.
Yeah, those are the hot spots.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think we've been saving money on so many projects that it looks more doable,
Feasible.
possibly.
Right, as we get down to the end of our bond projects, and this is at the bottom, we have to decide, do we wanna spend this money on solar, do we wanna spend it on something else? Which is kind of broadly why we're here today, we're not doing anything specific, but saying, is this something you want us to continue, and if so, in what direction?
Right. Exactly. The action item is, this is what we've done so far, should we keep pursuing this, because and then you can tell us. So let's look at Nordoff for a minute. Here's the overview of the campus. And if you see the red X, the red X is underneath the number 3 right now, or underneath the number 11, right there. That is the connection point where all the power comes in from SCE, and it goes to a substation in that green circle in the middle. We believe that we can connect our solar to that point, because one of the cost factors of your solar installation is how far are the runs to the point of connection where we go. So we've talked with electricians and the architecture, and we believe that that's a point where we could connect to. We then designed carport type structures that you can see in the little blue rectangles, the series of those all over the parking lot. And one of the things that came up in our meeting that we had with all the vendors, when we got all in the same room, was they said, well, yeah, that's great, that works, but what about moving it to an entrance, moving it towards the entrance of the stadium, and maybe doing something along there. Something else that we learned, along that area. So something else that we learned in that meeting was that if we provide carport parking for the parking lot, we have to do an equal amount of carport coverage for ADA spots.
Yep.
So that's something else that we would look at doing. So you can't put the shade structure for everybody else, but the ADA was on the sun. So
And these longer runs would be underground?
yes,
So-
yes, definitely.
So these carports include ADA spots, is that
Yep.
what you're saying?
Yep. We would place them in such a way that they would,
What is an ADA spot?
the handicap spots.
Oh.
Americans with Disabilities Act.
Got it. No, I understand, I just didn't know what you meant by the spot.
Parking
Just
spot.
the-
Parking
just the-
spot, yeah.
Just handicap spots, not like.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So those are the highlights of that one. We would save about $84,000 a year at that campus. This was an exciting idea that the architect came up with, because originally I had located well, right in the middle of the campus is the X where we're trying to connect our power to. And we have built into the structure for the new dining hall, that, you know, where it'll support solar, and it's already DSA approved and all that stuff, so we're good there. But that's not enough real estate to do what we need, so we could put shade structures over the stadium bleachers, and then put some facades up to make it look kind of like Coliseum looking structure, so that when you're looking at it from Ojai Avenue, it looks more like a college with bleachers than it does, you know, currently. So I thought that was just kind of an exciting idea.
And shade over the bleachers.
Explore the area that between where the red line is and, you know, like past the dining, that's the area, that whole quad that kids, down here. Yeah.
As far as providing
That's where we
shade
like
for the
some
kids.
shade,
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially since it might be one of those dead. And we could, but open also spots.
the indoor-outdoor features of the new dining hall, you know, could limit the amount of kids that are actually hanging out here now. Because the new dining hall has the roll-up doors and out onto the patio and whatever, so.
Well, at least we can reschedule graduation back to 1 PM.
I think we'll keep it the way it is, thanks.
Why was it
We
ever-
have to sit out on the field, remember? We don't get those shaded spots.
That was fantastic.
Yeah. So, and certainly, these are just ideas at this point. It's real easy to move it on the thing and put it somewhere else. Ultimately, we decide that's not where it belongs, but that was an exciting idea for us. And we saved a ton of money there too.
Put it on the gym
Oh,
for
let me just say,
shade.
yeah, let me just say this about the budget numbers you see on here. We've used a standard $3.50 a kilowatt hour DC as an installed cost. And that's a number we got from vendors, and we talked about it in our meeting. They said, yeah, that's kind of a conservative number, but it's in the ballpark. So these numbers that you see for budget are in the ballpark. And I don't want to put a real high number there that makes bidders think, oh, well, we can charge more. But they're realistic, but they're on the conservative side. So then where are we at here? Miners Oaks. Okay, Miners Oaks, we are thinking about a couple of things there. We've put the shade, on this, the shade structure is an extension of the current lunch shade structure. The utility room where that connects at the bottom is inside basically a janitor's closet that's about a 10 by 10 room. And that's where all the switchgear and everything is. That would probably all stay there, but we might just bring a back feed. We might place the location for solar somewhere else and back feed to that room, because it's not very accessible right now. And so that's up. The other thing that we could do besides the shade structure in at the lunch area would be to go ahead and do some carport shade structures as well.
A
So
lot closer to the electrical.
yeah, it's a lot closer to the electrical, and we've kind of vacillated back and forth, and some of the experts have said, yeah, you could do either. There's pluses and minuses to both, but that's kind of where we're looking at for the
Yeah,
moment.
there's a lot of digging there.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. The discussion at Miramonte was that they liked it, and we moved the shade structures from one side of the parking lot to the other because it was easier, and we were worried about trees and things maybe clouding some of our shade. There's a couple of options here. We don't need all of that. You can see there's some by the bottom of the playground, but you could put it either on the playground out there next to the asphalt, or you could put it on the parking area.
Don't
So-
go through the new asphalt.
No, it would be adjacent to it. It'd be adjacent to it. Yeah.
So out of curiosity, if we have those on structures and it's a shade platform, right, out on the playground,
Yeah.
how durable is it as we're playing basketball around it with kids and like
Balls.
balls?
Yeah. They're pretty sturdy. I don't think a basketball would damage it.
But we'd consider that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'd have to look at it.
Yeah.
They'll also probably be angled slightly this way, so the basketball will be hitting the end of it, not the surface of it.
I just imagine you're gonna get a whole bunch stuck up there.
Yeah. Or we could keep it in the parking lot, say.
I'll bet they don't recommend putting them next to basketball courts, but I don't know.
Yeah, so we saved 20 grand a year there, 21 grand a year. San Antonio Elementary is the only one where we're suggesting ground units. And because we're already gonna put a shade structure there for the lunch area. And we've looked at doing a shade structure that's engineered for solar power, and it just really gets cost prohibitive at that location, and the way that the play structure people are talking about there. They gave us so much grief, we said, let's just put it on the ground. So,
Yeah, and one of the architects was concerned about putting the lunch shelter in the middle here, and just the aesthetics of the solar panels on top of the lunch shelter.
Yeah, and there's a lot of
Next
trees.
to the more historical building, and there's a lot of trees there.
Yeah, yeah. So, and so this is the smallest unit as well, because they don't use as much electricity there.
So would it be fenced off?
Yeah, be fenced off, protected.
Okay.
And Topa, we have a bunch of real estate at Topa that we're not using at the north side. So
Just
there-
going back to San Antonio, it seems like there's so few, they could be used to shade in the top area of the little amphitheater.
I originally drew it there, and for reasons that I was convinced when we went to our meeting and all the experts are there, we moved it over to a ground unit in lieu of that. Part of it, I think, was that they didn't feel it was gonna get full sunlight. And another thing, part of the discussion was that there wasn't as much use of that area that would need shade, and sometimes they wanted it warm. Do you remember the other
Yeah, they were saying
objections?
when they do the, right up here, yeah, when they do the assemblies, this time of year, it's cold enough out there, that it doesn't get enough sun. And the rock steps are always cold this time of year. You know, a couple months of the year it would be nice, but the consensus was, and it would also take away from the aesthetics of sitting out there, and kind of, the views frankly from that amphitheater are incredible.
Yeah.
So, that was the other
And no
concern.
rooftop right there by that building by the amphitheater? There's
No.
issues
No,
with rooftops?
it's just open.
So none of the roofs, period, are rated structurally for solar panels. So, or if we were to go that route, it opens up a whole can of worms. TSA likes to jump back in then.
Everybody really liked this idea. If you go up just a little higher, please. There you go. Everybody really liked this idea of putting the carport shade structures there in that location. You can see the red X is where our current power panel is. We would propose moving that panel over to the blue, to the green X, because that panel is right in the middle of a corridor for the students walking by, and it's not the best location for it anyway. I think we already have a budget item to move that on our Measure J. So rather than simply backfeed it from where the green X is, we would actually move the whole switchgear, everything over to the green X, and just close off what's underground there where the red X is, and put a lockable vault, and it'd be underground.
Yeah, I looked in there once, everything in that box is antique.
Yes, in fact, that's a Zinsco panel, and two of the contractors that looked at it and talked to us, they said, we will not attach to that panel, you need new switchgear. We've been out of business for decades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Miners Oaks and Topa have Zinsco units. Miners Oaks is self-contained, so we backfeed it from another switchgear, it's not as big a deal. This one, as you've seen, it's just a cabinet in a corridor. So, we're actually discussing moving it and doing that currently as a separate project. That way it's already done before we jump into a solar project.
And we'll be happy to get that kind of eyesore off the center of campus.
Oh, yes. A lot of people.
Cheryl's gonna have to go paint a mural on it.
All right, so we look at the question was, why did we do this? So, for some reason, things got offset. These used to be all in line. But the bottom line is that we would save an estimated $212,000 a year at the current rate of what we're paying school by school for energy. Not all the schools pay the same rate because of usage and tiers and all that. And so we'd save that $212,000. We would pay somewhere around 20 grand a year for the operation and maintenance cost, which would net the district $191,000 in operating expense, where we would be basically transferring money from the Measure J money, pays for things that saves the operating expense of the district $191,000. And so then if we and that's if we buy it. One of the other ways you can finance it is with what's called a PPA, a power purchase agreement. And if you use a power purchase agreement, it doesn't cost you anything, you just come and do it. But then basically the power purchase agreement becomes SCE for you. They are your utility, and you are paying them back the cost of the installation, the cost of the equipment, the interest cost for all of the money it took to do that, and the profit margin for that PPA company, profit and overhead. And the advantage for you is that you get a fixed rate that says for the next 20 years we're going to pay 18 cents a unit or whatever for the, for our power, and it stays fixed instead of the SE rate that's going to go up, and we all know that. So,
Yeah, but don't PPAs typically have like a built-in escalation percentage?
Some do. So
Most don't, because I just put solar on my house a year ago.
yeah.
Yeah, and
But
I've,
there's different rates, I mean, some are 18%, some are 13%,
Bless you.
or cents.
but I think what's unclear on all of those is what happens at the end of the.
At the end of 20 years, you own it.
Well, some of them you don't, and then it's unclear what happens.
Right, yeah, and again, what happens to your O&M agreement and all
Right.
that sort of thing, so it leaves some variables, so.
And I'd say in working with talking to other districts that have done PPAs, they're not super thrilled with that. They would have potentially explored other options in
Yeah.
talking to them.
Yeah, and so it's a contract, you can negotiate anything you want, but the typical PPA works like this: it has zero cost up front. The purchase of power is contracted at a fixed rate for 20 years. The O&M can be separate or included in the power rate. The savings are primarily achieved through the price protection against the cost of versus the cost of the utility that's going to raise it. And the PPA essentially finances that system and puts some profit on it and sells you the energy. So then I looked at the cost explained, and so they're going to pay for the cost of the system, the O&M, the interest expense, the profit and overhead, and we are going to pay for the utility costs above the power, above what the system produces. Okay, so now let's take back and let's go to the bottom and look at the same $212,000 that we generated with our system that we would have paid to. There you go, perfect. That same $212,000 that we would have saved, we're going to still pay for an O&M agreement of $20,000. We're going to make an interest payment. If you use 3% interest on $2.6 million, you're going to pay $176,000 a year. You're also going to pay some amount of profit to the PPA. I put 5% in there. That's not a very healthy company to me, but you're going to give them something. So another 10 grand for profit to them, and we don't know the cost of what you're going to pay to SCE. But if you were generating 90%. That should be around a $20,000 number, but without any number for that, you're going to save $5,300 a year using a PPA as opposed to buying the system yourself.
Well, we can borrow money cheaper than they can. I think that's.
Yes, yeah, we could borrow money at 4%. It doesn't make sense. 3% or less it starts to make sense. But yeah. So, questions?
And this slide, just so you know, was not in your packet. These two PPA slides are new. But I could see you all looking up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what is the action?
The action says, do we continue to pursue this? Should we keep going? Or do we say, nah, solar's dead and let's, talk about something else?
Because there's also some additional options we would want to think about. Like we can't, with the amount of money we have as a line item for solar, we can't do everything. So would we want to do all of the elementary schools? I think we could actually do Nordhoff, Amitilha, or Matilha, and all of the elementary schools, my rough calculations.
Yeah, those kinds of decisions. to
Right,
talk
and we
about.
would save essentially close to the same amount. So do we want to do, what would we prefer to do? Those kinds of things. We don't have to make those decisions now, but if we want to move forward, we would be bringing back to you, here's.
And then
how
if there
you-
was a future bond, do we pay for something out of that or whatever?
Do you guys wanna also talk about, I saw a reference to the battery system that you said there might be some subsidies for?
Yeah, we think that there are enough grants and things out there for battery systems and resiliency that we think we could do that at no cost to us, no additional cost to us. And one of the things that we talked about with resiliency is that, because I asked the question, okay, well, so if SCE is responsible for starting a fire because they were providing power in a windstorm, and now we're the local power supplier, are we exposed? And the answer came back, no, you're only providing power to yourself. You're not supplying the neighborhood with power and have some sort of liability there.
But that would,
But we would be, let's say for a Red Cross, I mean, we've got power. People Red Cross uses us and we can have people come in and charge their cell phone on our outlet or something. I don't know.
that would be a consideration with power outages, right? We were pretty lucky this year, but future consideration about being able to operate our schools even if in a power
Well, it's
outage.
windy.
Right.
And when
Well,
we brought everybody together, that was one of the discussions, was not just Nordoff or the Red Cross or like the Thomas Fire situation, but also going forward to look at Matilahaw too, because you have another gym, you have a brand new dining hall there. You know, it could be another place for the community, and just to keep those two places up and going.
And as I understand, I'm not an expert yet, although I just put in solar, what is it, net metering 2.0 or whatever. A little different than it used to be back in the old days. They used to pay you for what you put under the grid, and now it's not quite as nice. But as I understand it, with a battery system, you can you obviously you're generating power during the day. You also you also back up your batteries. Then at night, to some degree, you're pulling it off your batteries, so you don't
Correct.
have to go out back to the grid during the.
The other thing the batteries can be used for is to control your peak demand. So that what you are using from SCE is not, your load is lower, so you're not in as high of a peak demand. So they charge you based on, if you're using 600 amps as a BAM, then you get charged in the 600 amp rate, where if you're only using 200, you get a lower rate.
And these grants are coming from the proposed Prop 15, or they're
No,
already?
these
No, they're
grants are-
separate. I had those in the budget slide.
Oh, okay.
They're a non-Prop 98.
That's where I saw it.
Yeah.
Yes,
right.
I remember.
I put them in
saw
there
it.
on purpose.
Right. Yep. So,
I
that's
think
that.
this is interesting. I do my little rough calculating thing, and it looks like a payback in under 14 years. And if you figure rates going up through SCE, and they're talking about some really precipitous increases.
Yes.
That could drop to 10 or fewer.
Yeah.
And that's pretty consistent with what little I know about.
No,
about
I
economics of
100%
solar.
agree with you. Yeah.
And it's actually taking bond money to pay for it, and we get the money in the general
In the
fund.
general
which
fund,
is
right.
Plus just environmentalism and our
Stewardship.
right.
I think this is a great idea.
What's the
going.
lifespan on these?
The thing you'll start seeing in terms of what wears out, they have to be kept clean, obviously, and that's part of your O&M agreement. But what goes out first is the inverters, the device that changes the solar power into power that we can use, and because it comes in as DC and goes out as AC, and and those last 7 to 15 years. You're probably going to start be replacing them during that windows, and they can be expensive. They can be $1,500, $2,000, for the inverters.
And the panels themselves?
Panels themselves have a warranty for the full 20 years. Some 30.
Should we listen to public comments
Yes.
before we?
I'd be happy to step aside.
Thank you, Ellen. Bob Daddy?
This is not a recommendation, but I've done some extensive work with Spur and Forefront. And what I'd like you to do is not spend a penny of Option J money. What happened 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when we took a look at the bond, we had a whole different environment. The environment now is the utility companies are probably $25 billion underfunded because they're going to have to go ahead and they're reconfiguring. If you've been anywhere in town, and you've seen these $10,000, $15,000, $30,000 poles changing, all of the infrastructure changing, that's in your rate. If you don't know what the PUC does, it gives these guys a guaranteed 8 or 9% rate of return. They spend $1 billion, they get the $1 billion back plus the rate of return. That is not a guess that the energy rates are going to triple in 20 years. It's not a guess. If you go with the power purchase agreement, you save your 2.3 $3-6 million that you don't spend a penny of, and spend it for something you need now. A dollar spent now is going to be worth 4 times more over the next 20 years compounded. You're going to save that. You have a $20,000 maintenance that's going to go crazy. The other thing is with the power purchase agreement, and not necessarily Spur or Forefront, but there are a number of them. You're going to save that $20,000 a year. That's going to get to be $30,000 in 5 or 6 years. That's going to be $40,000 or $50,000. And those inverters, on a power purchase agreement, they're responsible for 100% of the maintenance, the new panels, the inverters, everything. They put everything in. You don't do an RFP. You do zero. You just say you do it. You've got the contract. They get the permits. They get the financing. They do the construction. They're going to be sending you a check for the excess of the electricity. So you'll have $2.5 million soon now that you don't have to spend on this. Let somebody spend their money. And in the 7 to 10 to 14 years, whenever these things start to fail, you got a 20-year contract. You've got a 20-year guarantee. So if it's 8 or 9 cents a kilowatt and it's 40 cents a kilowatt in 15 or 16 years, you got the 8%. You've locked in that plus the maintenance plus the guarantee, plus you get an overage check. Please explore that. I mean, that really is the way to go. There's a terrific outfit in San Luis Obispo that was fantastic that you should use until I found out that they sold to Duke Energy, the biggest polluter in the East Coast that puts coal slag into the river. So, you know, that's a gag factor. I did track down Mr. Offerman at one of our water meetings, and I found out who did all of the work for the county. So when you go to the county center, the government center, you see that phalanx. Forefront and Spur did it. They also did the city of Paso Robles. They did Paso Robles High School. They did Tascadero High School. And that's current. Please, before you go further, try the no money out of your pocket, no money ever. Because at the end of 20 years, they're going to have these solar units that are going to be 10 times better. And you have the power energy interruption grant that the governor's putting out. So you will be able to get those backup batteries through those grants. Because you're a school, you have second priority to hospitals. So that'll be available. Go with the no money out of pocket. Spend the money that we need to enhance the system, because when we knew we had $100 million in needs, which has now grown to $130 million in needs, every dollar is critical. So spend that $2.5 million. Get something for what we need now. Thank you.
Thanks. And William Wyrick.
Can I ask a quick question in between? With the PPA environment, they also will do this infrastructure, like the shade structures?
Everything.
Yes.
Run everything. I decided to come tonight because I'm concerned that we have a pro forma here provided by SiteLogic, which I believe is a private company. Spur, I want to make sure the board understands, is a joint powers authority. It's a public agency specifically formed to benefit school systems. And I have a handout from some of the Spur information where they are specifically a buying consortium. They are not a private company, for 200 unified school districts and community college districts, as well as other public agencies. They have standardized master contracts. They have very deep pocket and high levels of expertise in terms of partnerships with installers. You can see on this page here that they do an integrated process that doesn't involve a lot of uncertainty about operations and maintenance and trying to bootstrap into very specialized issues with, you know, all the soft costs that you would have to gear up in terms of your of staff, etc. And they will gladly come in at no cost to the school district and do a pro forma just like that, and make sure that you are making an informed decision as a board. So again, Spur is not a private company. It is a unique public agency formed specifically
to do this service for school districts all over the state and has done that for districts all over the state. And I would like to point out near the end there where they talk about, as a joint powers authority, we aggregate purchasing power and expertise for our member and non-member participants. Our standards of transparency and competitiveness ensure that your best interests are being served. They go through the list there in terms of how this is a specialized, statewide, joint powers agency under legislative authority to do this specific type of service for school districts. I would urge you to talk to, at the very least, have a proposal presented by SPUR, and at the very least, do some vetting with all these school districts that are listed that SPUR has serviced all over the state before you make a final decision with a private procurement process with private vendors. This is a unique organization, and it should not be lumped in with other private organizations in terms of your consideration. Thank you.
And Alan, I see Spurs on this list. Can you
Yeah,
talk
can
about?
I rebut a couple of things?
But they were not asked to do a pro forma presentation.
We
for
do
you.
have a proposal from Spur.
Well, why not present it to the board?
Because we have our own proposal.
Yeah,
It's
this
a combination
Alan
of
created
Spur,
this.
SiteLogic, PFMG, California Solar, and there's one other.
Have you asked SPUR to make a proposal
We
and present that to the board?
We invited Spur to come to our meeting where we talked about all of these things.
Yeah.
And Nate wasn't able to make it, but Nate and I have been emailing each other.
Okay.
I gave him the whole package of what you've seen here tonight, and so he's aware of all that. We're talking to Spur.
I understand.
Spur has been in our office, and they've made
they
made a proposal 3 years ago, and they made a proposal this year.
I'm just saying, in terms of presenting all options to the board for consideration, see what their proposal is as a public agency that specifically services this need for school districts. That's what they were formed to do.
Right, so the difference is, we don't want Spur or anyone else coming in and saying, here's what we think you need. The difference is that we're going to say, this is what we think we need, we've vetted it, we know what we want. We want proposals according to the Public Works bidding process. We want you to propose, this is the scope, we've defined it, you give us a price to do that.
And that's their whole point of their joint powers agency master contract process that they are legislatively authorized to do, is to do the whole function more effectively than that type of process.
Then they would win the bid.
It's not a bid process with SPUR.
I do appreciate you bringing this to our attention, and we will.
I just want you
take
to
it into
consider the
consideration.
option, and I would suggest that you get a formal proposal for them to consider.
Thank you.
As a public agency option.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, yeah, so I wanted to say that Spur Forefront is on our list and that we are talking to them. I emailed Nate Smith just last week. He and I are talking regularly about the process, and we are engaging them.
And Alan, you put this together, right? So you brought all those people into a room that help us figure out what it is we think we need based
Correct.
on all the ideas, so that we can have kind of a scope of the project, and then we will put that back out to solicit proposals and bids from other.
That's correct.
From whomever applies.
Yeah.
Right, so this isn't a proposal, this is our work to put this together.
Right, this is not a proposal, and tonight's action is not about, do we want to approve this proposal to hire some company to do it? We're saying, here's what we found out so far, do we keep going? And so, and then I also want to, I totally agree with you, Bob. Where's Bob still here? Yeah, totally agree with Bob. I worked for PG&E for 3 years. They have a 10th floor at 345 Market Street in San Francisco. That's whole job is to run those numbers and run the calculations so they can prove to the PUC what their operating costs are, so they can get that extra money. Cost plus. Yeah, cost plus. Yeah. The thing I want to say about so there's that, and then the thing I want to respond to on the PPAs, and that is that there is no free lunch. There's different ways to finance it. You can go get a loan, you can get a PPA, or you can finance it with Measure J or some bond funds, or you can take the money out of the general fund, but there's no free lunch. If you are getting somebody else to finance it for you, it has a cost.
I have a nephew who does solar in Louisiana, and I talk to him a lot before I put solar on my home. Now, I understand my home is very different from the district, but he said, if you can afford to buy it, you're better off. I wouldn't mind talking to you and talking to Spur and getting a little more information, using what you have put together to sort of ask, just as you can ask California Solar to give you information.
We have, yeah.
My tendency is to lean towards purchase and using Measure J funds, but I don't mind learning more about something that can make me change my mind.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I would say I'm, it's interesting though, I have to say, I kind of was a little bit closed-minded towards the PPA just because of the same reason, but you realize it's very, very interesting, and even if you look like at Bill's Spur document, you see, the upside to the district, can look sort of modest, right? You're saving this amount, but that's based on today's prices. And of course, the idea is that 10 years down the road, your cash flow is much better, and then somebody else is taking care of all the maintenance stuff. So it's definitely, I am definitely, I think we all agree we want to pursue this.
Yeah, and
But, and it's obviously when you're dealing, if Spur is, I'd love to,
I would never recommend that we put in a solar system, buy the solar system and not have an operation and maintenance agreement that covered all of those same things, the inverter replacements, all the washing it, keeping it clean. I don't think we have the maintenance staff to address maintaining a solar system. Let's just hire somebody else to do it. And if we're spending 20 grand a year maintaining it, we can't hire people to do what they can do. So, yeah. But that's it for solar.
I would
Thank
move
you.
to explore it more.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll second.
Is there something in particular you'd like to see us bring back? Would you like to see us bring analysis of different sites? Obviously PPA versus purchase.
Well, I guess what I would love would be, assuming this becomes a relatively soon an action item, in terms of what we're making a decision on solar, I guess I would like to see, along with the options, and especially PPA versus buying it, but also what we're not doing, Measure J wise. I mean, as Bob said, we easily have $100 million worth of stuff we could do in this district. So the question is, what are we not going to do because we're going to do solar?
What's at the
And
top of the
then
list?
if the answer is really devastating, then it obviously pushes you more towards a PPA. It seems a no-brainer. We should do at least a PPA, because at the very least we're going to lock in somewhat better than current rates and know that we're not going to be having to pay triple those in 10 or 20 years. So
I can't argue that. I just want to get the most bang for our buck.
yeah.
And obviously, I mean, the budget stuff we talked about earlier with the state, next year, we're really using up our reserves. We've been lucky with this sort of extra one-time money that comes in every year. We're not gonna be getting that this year. And, if we can look at having an extra $190,000 in general fund money, that might be
Because what we really
critical.
need today is teachers
Yeah.
for kids and books and curriculum and all of, that's as much of a critical need as anything else is to have maintenance workers and custodians. And so that's kind of the bigger picture that we'll have to bring to you once we have a better understanding. Dr. Taiwo and I spent a couple of weeks hanging out in the business office.
Yeah, my thing on this is that.
I know, we,
Using bond money is restricted money, I'd rather use that and save money in the general fund, because the general fund, because any electricity money we're saving is money that can save teachers' jobs, things like that. Money sitting in obviously if there's other things that are necessary, that's one thing, but money sitting in your Measure J thing's not gonna be able to save a teacher's job.
right.
So if you can use that restricted money to lower your general fund thing, it's extremely valuable as far as stocking cuts and stuff like that. And
Right.
so, I don't know enough about it to tell you what to do, but I would just say that if you could do solar and you're looking at other projects and there's nothing that's gonna help the bottom line as much as this would, to the general fund, that'd be, it'd make my job a whole lot easier.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The next several items, 7.4.6, 7.4.7, 7.4.8 are ratifications of different projects. I'm wondering if we can take those all together, or if people have specific questions about those.
I'll move to approve those 3 items.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Change orders, right?
Yes.
And thanks for giving us the running total on the check. That's a helpful data point.
7.4.9 is the approval of the change order for Nordhoff Library project. I'm not sure why I left that one out of that list.
I was wondering why.
I'll move to approve 7.4.9.
Great, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And now that takes us to 7.4.10, the approval of equipment purchase of a John Deere tractor.
Well, Chuck's not jumping up and down, and I'm wondering why not. This is.
I know, we've been talking about a tractor
You wanna talk
for
about
2
this,
years.
Adam?
So, we've gone through it. We talked to multiple vendors. We talked to other school or other couple college campuses that have it. The draw to the Ventrac, it's actually not. It's a John Deere Stotz Ventrac. Anyways, the draw to the Ventrac is it really does come with. We're buying 4 attachments, and it's got 25 more attachments we could buy. Down to this purchase includes the tractor, the ballpark groomer, front and back, the power bucket, the leaf vacuum, to where it's. You should see the groundsman out there raking the leaves and picking them up with a shovel out of the parking lot. This thing could do it. It's a 10-minute job. And the baseball groomers are.
We can maintain our baseball field that we just.
Absolutely.
Made so
And something
beautiful.
that, it could be done, the current condition that our field was in, it could have been done in probably 5 hours. They can do it in 3, I'd say 5, but in previous years, we've had teams out there for a couple days doing it.
So this isn't gonna impact our general fund, but it is gonna give us nicer campuses.
Yes.
It allows us to be more efficient with the use of our maintenance ground.
Right.
Exactly.
custodians.
And it's something to where that if the operations team feels that they could use another attachment, they could budget for it every year. You're looking at a couple grand per attachment.
And also, we're currently spending money to rent a lot of these things. So we're offsetting the current rental costs of, I don't know what the attachments are, but whatever attachments you told me about.
So
There are no
My tractor
pictures
knowledge is small.
No pictures or videos, but I would move to approve anyway.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
I have, my only question is, how do you, this is not a bid process, I assume, but you go through some process to assure you're getting the best price you can find? How does that work?
Yeah, this is a great, I want
So
to give kudos
Ventrac
to Adam and
actually
Alan for this.
has, there's obviously only certain distributors for Ventrac. Stotz equipment is the only one. Actually, Ventrac was just bought by Toro too, side note. So, the infrastructure and the maintenance behind it will only kick into gear. Ventrac offers a GSA deal to where you can go to the GSA website and purchase stuff for government agencies. So we went there and we're saving about 10 grand by going through the GSA website. We went to Stotz and they said, yeah, we'll match it, no problem. Done. And come to find out, if we buy it through the GSA website, Ventrac tells Stotz to send it to us anyways. So we got the local distributor to buy it or to give it to us as well at the GSA's price.
Nice.
So on the GSA site is stuff that's already been pre-bid, predetermined for government agencies and public works.
I do note it says customer agrees to read operator's manual. Who's gonna read it?
We're gonna read it out loud as a proclamation in the board meeting.
Yeah. And I think Chuck's just being quiet because he's crossing everything, hoping we, Yeah, key. Yeah, he's not gonna believe it until we get the key here. So.
Sorry, that was a longer version. Did you?
I'll second the motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the traffic.
That brings us to 7.
Can we all get rides?
7.4.11, which was our emergency edition, which is the, I don't have language in front of me,
Yeah,
but.
there is no language because it's an emergency
Right.
edition. But if you give me just a second to pull up the PowerPoint, which Alan and Adam and David Rogers and Dave Munson spent some time building today, so thank you for taking time out of your day. Great. Where did we decide that this was? This was in, not solar fire.
This
fire-
is in
in the
Measure J,
presentations.
budget agenda 211.
I think I got it.
Give me your pointer before.
Very good, thank you. There we go.
No, he,
Here we are.
he said he wanted to stay to get to know the district, but yes, Taiwo knows he can leave, he just wanted to stay and understand our district better, so.
It's 9 o'clock if you wanna head home.
I actually prefer to just stay at board meetings and so I can get a better grasp on the issues that district face. I mean, obviously, not everything pertains to me, but it's interesting to see what the district's facing and what their priorities are and stuff like that.
We appreciate your dedication.
So,
this is a-
and he's not even getting paid
This
yet.
is sort of a cooperative effort between what the school district wants and what the city wants.
And now, actually, I'm gonna give it just a little bit of background, is that okay? Before
Yeah,
we jump
yeah,
into
yeah.
this, okay. I just wanted to make sure I found it. So, on August 20th, which was like, I just started, basically, we met with Greg Grant and James Vega and Alan, Adam, Dave Rogers. So we had a meeting, I think so. We had a meeting for kind of pre-ATP to talk about some options for the parking lot. I know you have a resolution in support of the ATP project generally. And we met to discuss specifically a cutout at Nordhoff High School. So that was 6 months ago. At that time, we went through kind of some of the options that we'll show you today, although we didn't have these beautiful pictures. And we talked about kind of what we would prefer, and what was problematic in terms of a cutout and parking lot redesign, which Alan will go through in a minute. We thought we had come to kind of, so they presented A, we presented B, and we thought we'd come to kind of a, like, okay, we agree for C. That consensus item was in an agenda item that went to the city council yesterday. City council voted to spend $8,000 to have their group, their consulting group, I think is called Alta, right? Come back and revisit option A and give a proposal for what that would look like. So we wanted to bring to you tonight, so that you have all the same information and you understand kind of our thinking and our reasoning and where we went, and you can move forward as you choose to. So we just want to walk through kind of the designs and what we were thinking at the time and what we're thinking now.
Right, great, so, thank you. So there is the Maricopa Highway in front of the parking lot at Nordhoff School, just so we all know where we're talking about. Adam, kind of show them how the cars go in.
So the cars come in here off of, going what is northbound, make a left in here, or you make the right in here coming from Miners Oaks, Upper Water area.
Right.
Is this Pine Ridge that we're
This
at
is
right
This
here?
is church.
This is church.
Oh, we're at
Yeah.
church.
Right across
Or
from
church, yeah.
So obviously the issue is these cars stack up while these cars are coming in, so.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody's coming from Miners Oaks, they're taking a right turn, you have to take a left turn, you don't know who's gonna go.
you
Right.
gotta wait.
And you're both gonna take the exact same lane to get into the parking lot.
Right.
Correct.
Right. So that's the problem that the city wants to correct,
Sorry, can you?
or we all want to correct.
This driveway too is only 35 feet wide, and one of the issues of the current situation is obviously you both directions have to use this one inbound lane. And while it's just a little too narrow for 3 lanes, the approach doesn't lend itself to be able to make that right-hand turn in, with the current curb situation, sidewalk, all of the above. So.
Okay. This is another view of the same, from the other side. And so then, here's Plan A. This is what the city first proposed, and Adam, why
And
don't
I'm
you
just
kinda-
gonna zoom in here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna attempt to zoom in
When
here.
it stops moving, you can.
That might be as much as I can,
That's plan B,
sorry,
go up
as
one,
much as I can
please.
go.
One slide up.
This is plan B.
Oh, sorry. That's
Here's
what you were
plan
saying.
A.
They all look the same to me.
Yeah. Okay, so Adam kind of explained what they're talking about there. We got a new
So
entry.
this is the new entry that's.
So this is the original option
Correct.
that was presented.
They want an automotive entry there.
A new driveway cut, correct, right here.
For the people coming from minor zones.
For right turn only, correct, and obviously left turn, so that alleviates this backup a little bit. But the issue is that everybody then needs to get here.
Right, so we're eventually trying to go to this drop-off that we were just talking about in front of the F-wing.
Right. So if they do that, we lose 3 parking spaces where that red line is. They have to then snake through the parking lot. They're at the red stars, those are ADA spots, handicap parking spots that we would lose probably because effectively that little L-shaped piece there would become the drop-off zone. You know, I can't imagine parents are going to drive all the way around to the stand in traffic to go all the way around to the designated drop-off zone. They're just going to drop their kids there. You know, as a practical matter, they're just going to drop their kids. So we might as well make it a dropping zone.
And you could come in here and cut across, but then obviously then you have the bottleneck of coming here anyways. All it does is move the bottleneck, you know,
What do the stars represent?
3 cars on.
These are
Handicap spots
ADA
ADA
spots.
stalls.
that we might lose.
And when you say we might lose them, what do you mean?
You probably wouldn't lose the one by the stadium, but you would probably lose the one that's closer to the L, in the middle of the L there, just because that would become a drop-off zone. You would make it yellow.
Yeah, so we think that this plan would probably, in talking to Dave Munson, would require us to have a drop-off zone over here. It would also require like changing supervision. We mostly supervise this one spot here, but we think the reality is if you're driving in here, you're not gonna cut across at that yellow line, you're gonna come drop off here kind of in front of the tennis courts and then go, essentially, yeah, you can't see where here is, because I can't. So here, the tennis
So yeah,
courts.
you're gonna come in here and drop here.
Yeah.
You're not gonna cut across here, cause you have the traffic as well.
What,
Cause then you're battling this traffic coming in.
and Kevin and Shelley, you guys were there in the morning.
Yeah.
How many students are already parking here? Because I can also see an issue with, you know,
You've gone through a lot of
here
Right.
kids.
and
Yeah.
walking students.
We were
Right.
concerned about that as well.
Sure. It really transfers the problem off of the street and onto our parking lot. The other thing is if we make this kind of a change to our parking lot, we're talking about a DSA access review at the minimum. They also might look at fire, life, and safety, because if you change the entrance, now we're talking about fire, life, and safety. And although we think we're pretty confident that the ADA wouldn't be much of an issue, fire, life, and safety could mean that they could say, well, we want you to put fire hydrants in this place and that place, and now we're talking about a couple $100,000 in digging trenches and putting in fire lines.
So the process for finding that out is you have a plan, you submit it to DSA, you go through plan check, which you pay for,
Right.
and then you would get it back, right? So it's not free to find out what it looks like. There's a whole process.
Right.
Can you go through that process and then not do
Moving
it?
the new entry down so that you have 2 lanes coming in. There's no way for two lanes to go to the drop-off area.
Hold on. Yeah, we're
And
good.
then,
Anything else on the, Chuck, did you have a question on this one? Okay.
So that was their original proposal. We said, we
Just-
don't like that idea.
just to touch on the access.
Did it come
component.
with any, I know they're working with Alta, I watched the movie, I watched the,
It was a movie.
the meeting last night. They obviously, Alta would presumably be a fairly sophisticated, with all due respect, better than us for just talking about traffic flows, if they're really truly experts at it. So did they actually have a proposal for how this would work?
No. We
Okay.
hadn't contracted with them yet.
Okay.
That's kind of.
That's what that 8,000
Yeah,
is.
so in our,
That's the next step.
That's the point.
Yeah.
yeah. So
We
in
said
our,
we said we have some issues with this. It's just,
Okay.
Yeah.
so then we just talked about them.
And just to touch on the access compliance real quick, just take the fire, life, safety off. DSA obviously, and access compliance deals with mainly, obviously ADA stuff. And that opens up a full access compliance. We put in the shade structures in the kinder at Miramonte. on one side of the campus. On the other side of the campus, we had to put in two grab bars for the drinking fountain. We had to put in new truncated domes, new striping, and new ADA signage in the parking lot. Not that it was bad, it was just the code had changed. And so the point is, it can dovetail throughout campus.
And they look at the whole campus,
Yep.
so
Right.
they
Access
won't
review
just
is
be looking at the parking lot, it's
Right.
the whole campus.
And it frankly is, it is kind of depends on what plan checker you get.
Right, as always.
As always, yeah.
Yeah. So then what happened was, we said we have some issues with that, and then the city came back with Plan B. And this is the city's Plan B.
That was in the proposal yesterday.
Okay.
That went to city council, that you saw.
So explain that one.
becomes a bike path.
We have a walking or a bike path there. We have a protected right turn lane into, we would widen that entrance at Church Street. And we'd have a protected right turn and also a protected left turn
We
then.
have a right turn.
So they don't have to fight each other coming onto campus. You still have an exit there. And they can merge somehow in our parking lot and then move over to the drop-off zone. And we said, it's got some merit.
So there's still merging issues, but it doesn't require us to lose parking spots, it doesn't require the DSA, the potential reviews, it doesn't, so.
Well,
Widening the.
Widening that
entry.
right.
Widening this could trigger access, fire, life safety, all of the
Even
above,
though
It
it's
could.
only-
even though
It
it's only a
could.
few feet.
How do we know?
And
I
then
You
mean,
don't know until you do
And
it.
the crosswalk's there, and
So this would also have to go to
that
DSA.
would be obviously a
Maybe,
question for the city.
depends on if
in
the
terms
city
of
does it.
If you widen,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, so if you widen this, the crosswalk then becomes obviously in here, cause you can't widen this side, cause you have a backflow device here. And as Chuck pointed out, the water main goes across the road here, so you really have to widen this side, so then it becomes an issue of the crosswalks in the way.
Which is why we had this picture back here, so you can see
Right.
that's
You
our
can't widen
constraint
this
right
side,
there.
You have to go that side. of
You'd
the
lose that
crosswalk.
tree.
Is there space for, I mean,
On
to
the other
get
side.
deeper into the parking lot for merging? Because
Mhm.
I can
Yeah.
see, yeah, I mean, if they have to merge right there at the driveway, that's gonna bottleneck right out to the street.
Yeah, you're gonna merge right about here where that drain is.
Yeah.
Cause that planter, that's the end of the planter there.
So we have a,
So we said, well, that idea has some merit, but we've got a better idea.
So this remains as Plan B, but the thought is putting in a left-hand turn here at this is Pyre, okay? The thought, our thought is, and, administration, everybody, is that not only do you see quite a few people still making an illegal U-turn here, out of the hospital.
I'm not gonna say I
out
do
of
it
everywhere,
sometimes,
you know?
I'm just gonna say I've seen people
Yeah,
doing it.
yeah, we watch people do it. But also, you have the U-turn here, so people can use this staff lot. And then also you have about 60 spaces here that are obviously going in this direction. And most of this is student parking. So you have students that can pull in here.
Cause right now, our students have to drive through the drop-off zone, which they, of course, cause they're kids, do safely, at a reasonable rate of speed,
Absolutely.
paying close attention to all the people around,
All 60.
while they drive through the drop-off zone. So this left-hand turn would allow people to get into those spaces going the other direction from the highway.
Right, yeah.
Which
without
might-
going
which
through the
might
loading zone.
alleviate some of this crush right here, if you could get that many cars in here. Or, obviously, as people are coming in here, they can go here, they can go to the next one, or they can go up like they do now and make the U-turn way up here still.
And
So
they
it
can
just
also,
gives more options, but
Or you could use, and you can also extend the drop-off zone to that little circle
where the buses go.
where the buses
So
go.
the U-turn has been, this left-hand turn has been an important component to us from this first meeting, because we think this left-hand turn is really important. It's not currently addressed in the ATP proposal.
Which left-hand turn you're talking, the one
At Pyre.
At Pyre, right.
So would there be any turn control as people exit the parking lot? Because again, if you're gonna have
So right
heavy
now,
left
there's
turn
only
traffic
right-hand turn.
and people are making left out of there,
there's only right-hand turn
Yeah.
out of this parking lot.
okay.
Currently as well.
Well,
From
theory.
like 7:15 to 8 in the morning and then in the afternoon.
There are signs there.
And one other just sort of wild idea is you see that yellow sort of oblong looking
Yeah, I wondered what that was.
there. That was an idea to say, well, if they take that down to 2 lanes, one each way, or if we brought a cutout in there, you could make a drop zone right there that would be off campus.
That would lead to this bike path and this pedestrian path.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So when was
And
was
just
this
make
ever
more area.
presented to the city?
Oh, Bill's got some info.
Can I make a comment? Just, I think this whole process of discussion has been really good, but none of us have the expertise of the company that was hired. And the purpose of the motion that I made, that was approved by the council to spend our money, out of our general fund, was to provide a venue for all of this to be driven into this company's expertise. And the idea is let's look at this whole issue, both school system property, Caltrans property, city right of way, as a whole. What makes sense in terms of addressing all of these issues from their expertise, and we pay for that, and all of us drive our input into seeing what they come up with, rather than trying to decide, all of us, not with their level of expertise, what they might come up with. So I think all of this, I would hope that the board could give direction to you guys and everybody to be driving all of this discussion into Alta and see what they come up with, and then we discuss
I
it.
think that's exactly what we're doing and why we are having this conversation, and we really hope that Alta hears what the impact of the driveway, the parking lot
That's the point that was the point, and we pay for them to
Well, no,
look
my
at it from an
point is-
optimal point of view, rather than constraining the design
I'm-
process at the front end.
No, which I'm not doing. What I'm hoping.
Well,
you'll
it did
hear-
happen in the last few
What I'm
months.
hoping you'll hear me say
Mhm.
is, we are thrilled to work with the city, and
Thank you.
that the city is willing to put up the money to do this study is wonderful. We wanted to publicly let Alta know and the city know what the constraints are on our end.
Absolutely.
And that's the point of this.
Absolutely
That's-
right.
That's all we're
And
doing
that,
here.
and I just,
So,
it's just a little, and this is all gonna happen parallel with all the other project development, because we're also gonna be doing we have a grant to actually do a temporary demonstration of how this all works, and bring that into the design process. So really what we're trying to do is let's go with what's, where we are now in terms of design development, but let's also parallel process driving all of this information into, a holistic view of what the best design would be, and see whether it's workable.
Yep.
So
Thank you.
was Alta there last night?
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
So, let me go back to our meeting and say, so we were at August 20th, you had this meeting, they presented A, and at that time, you said that probably is not gonna work.
So they presented A, we said we are not interested in this option because we don't think it solves our problem. It triggers all these parking lot potential issues, is there another option? So we worked
And
with
this was
staff.
just Public Works, this was not Alta.
Right.
So then,
So,
Monday-
but we were,
And that's what we need. 'cause
we were not in favor
I know
of
everybody
and
has an
don't see the advantage of this driveway cutout for us in terms of solving the problem. So the proposal was this driveway cutout, we have all these still left-hand turn issues on the other side of campus. So we discussed the option of, at that point, we're saying, this left-hand turn is important to us. It's really important to us. And then what the city came back with was in the proposal.
Well, by the left-hand turn, you mean Pirate.
Right, at Pyrie, the left-hand Pyrie.
So I wanna get from this August meeting to, let's have another option, to, a meeting last night, which was quite contentious and rude against the school board. What was expected of whom? I mean, is there a point to going through that, or no? Does we just move on?
I think we move on. I mean, my sense of it is that, I think all parties would agree that had the district, I certainly know that we as a board would agree, had the district known that we were in some kind of, impasse mode that could have been made more, become public earlier, to get the Alta thing going earlier, it would have been better. But I don't think there's blame, honestly, and I appreciate it coming to the board now, as Shelley said.
And I would say to Bill's point, it was, some of these other options were with Public Works. I mean, Greg Grant floated this idea back in March. And
Right.
we talked to Andy, and Andy said, no, we're not really
Right.
interested in the cut then. But it was the same thing, very informal. Hey, what do you guys think about this? No, that doesn't work for us. So, you know, and then, but now we're gotten to the point where I think we can all get in the same room, or at least,
Yeah.
and give the.
That's the intent.
Yeah.
I think it's important too that we not only evaluate morning and afternoon drop-off, but also football games and also
Absolutely.
emergency situations.
Right.
4th of July.
4th of July, but also like a fire.
Yes.
Fire, earthquake, other emergency, what happens when not only cars have to come through here, but also emergency vehicles and.
Yes.
Or the RVs that we're living
And you've got the hospital across the street. What happens when there are emergency vehicles going to both the high school and the
And-
hospital, you know?
There's been some studies on analysis like that, and we ought to just be transparent between the two agencies and fully share all that information.
So I also think two things. One, we tend to, as staff, work through a lot of the options and then bring you a couple of options to say, here are the best options. I think that might be slightly different than how city council operates, in which all information and then they do. So we do a lot of the legwork as staff, because we meet once a month for however many hours we make it through. And so our operationalizing is that we bring you what we think is staff, so that's our job. So it's a little bit different. And I've already forgotten my second point, so we'll just stop there.
Ellen, can I ask
Oh,
a
I know,
question?
sorry, can I remember?
No, yes,
Before I forget again. Just because there's the proposal, so if, I'm unclear on if the Alto proposal is to look holistically, or if it's to go back and look at specifically this option A, but
It's not to look at option A, it's to come up with an optimal design for the needs
And
of
there's
both agencies.
no
preconditions.
obligation to the school district to
No.
necessarily do that proposal.
That's absolutely correct.
And then my question is, if you, let's say Malta comes up with an idea, it has this left-hand turn, we think that works in terms of our concerns about students walking and students being able to park on that one direction, and then we take it to DSA, and they said, okay, and then can we say, never mind, we're not gonna do that?
I just asked
Yeah.
that, yeah,
Right.
and we can't say,
Yeah,
never
we have to
mind.
pay to submit the plans through Plan Check.
Right.
We return whatever we do from Plan Check, and then we can proceed or not proceed, but at that point, they're gonna tell us kind of the scope of what we've
Right.
opened ourselves up to.
Right.
And, you know, you can only hope, and every time you bring up logic and DSA, but one would hope that the context of this would be
understood.
that we, as a district, are supportive of the ATP broadly, and there will be a reduction down to 2 lanes, you know, and there will be.
Working with the city and Caltrans.
Right, so, you know, so hopefully
Yep.
DSA understands that we're trying to accommodate this massive change that will encourage bike riding and safety, and that, you know, that hopefully we're not, you know, gonna be punished for it.
We're gonna send you with the DSA proposal.
Yeah,
to make sure
I don't know that it works like that, but that
Well,
would be
I
nice.
think it might work, though, that at least they understand it's a different context than, this is not school-driven.
Right.
This is
It's a
driven by a bigger
multi-agency.
project.
Right.
Well, I like the idea of availing ourselves of an expert that will listen to our input,
Yes.
obviously.
Definitely.
It's very attractive to me, especially
That was
since we're not
certainly the
paying for it.
intent of my motion.
Yeah. I don't see why we would not, right? At least for me.
And,
Thank you.
yeah, go ahead.
I believe, I was raising kids back then, but that left-hand turn lane was eliminated after the kid was killed in the crosswalk that was going to.
On Pyrie?
Teddy Fopper, I thought it was at church.
But I think that's why they eliminated that, cause I like to ride motorcycles and left-hand turns that's the guy that's gonna get me when you're in the crosswalk. And I think that's why they cleaned that up, because all that activity was there. And the tree planting and then that, I think there's another dynamic. And what Jane pointed out was what my concern was, because when the city originally pointed out the bicycle path coming through there and the football stadium, is that opens up a whole nother traffic pattern, which we're prioritizing kids. And that's why I brought it up, that crosswalk. I mean, those lights and everything are great now. But that was my concern, because it still is an issue of making a wider driveway when the city's trying to make narrower, what do you call bulb outs or something at the sidewalks.
We
So
call
it's a
them
real-
curb outs now.
Curb outs, okay.
But, you know,
They used to be
same,
bulbs, but.
you know, distinction without a difference.
But with respect to that, I really do, we've got history, and I'm always concerned about the front of the schools, and that's what I see with that left turn. It just introduces more confusion.
And I agree with the pedestrian, you know, in theory, they could use the sidewalk that goes all along the stadium and then along the tennis courts, but you know doggone good and well they're not going to.
Right, this is our
They're
kind
gonna
of,
walk through the parking lot.
everybody goes towards where this arrow is. That's just the main
The general
part
flow.
of campus, especially once we have benches and it's like the hangout zone.
But it will, if I'm not mistaken, Bill, it will be it will be one lane now.
What, for the bikes?
Yeah, there will be a bike lane and there will be
Yeah,
a single lane of
it's a
traffic.
two-way bike lane, actually.
Right.
And then one lane, one traffic lane each
Right,
way.
right, but so
And
that
then the-
eliminates some of the confusion
And the
now,
dedicated
yeah.
bike lane is designed to separate from traffic, but, you know, to
Right.
really encourage bike riding. And they're designed to handle some of the emergency needs, the bike lanes.
Right.
Yeah.
So this isn't,
This is
this
information.
is not an action item, so if we've exhausted all the questions, we can move on. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to Adam and Alan for pulling that together after a 8 a.m. call this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to, if all are in agreement, push the governance handbook to a later date, if nobody has objection. Okay. Should we tackle the first reading of the California School Board Association recommended board bylaws? Were there any questions?
I didn't have a problem with it. I think there was a sentence that was redundant, but or it wasn't redundant, I think it was confusing, but I think it's required by ed code, so,
So we have to be
I
confused.
think so.
Yeah, do you have any notes?
So could you waive
yeah.
the second reading?
Oh,
Or do you want to?
if we're all in agreement, yeah, I think we can waive the second reading if there's no changes to it, right?
Did CSBA say that's okay?
I think we get to say it's okay. So,
Yeah.
do we have a motion to, did you wanna say something
I
about
just
it?
wanna, since it's on the subject, how are the elections gonna be handled?
We're not.
This would be a question, I don't know, let me research that and get back to you.
No, but really, I mean,
But-
it just confuses me.
Well, so from this point forward, every seat is by trustee area.
Right.
Right, so some of you are still sitting in seats that are at large, but moving forward, everything from this point on is trustee
So
area.
where Thane and Shelley live will be the two trustee areas that will be up for election in 2020.
But it's up to the county to just figure out which voters get which ballot.
Yes, right,
We don't
right.
have to-
Mhm.
Cause I won't be able to vote for either one of them. They
Right.
won't be on my ballot.
Mhm.
Cause I'm not in their trustee area.
So those
Right.
two areas are up, and then the next ones will be up in 22.
Right.
With trustee
I'm gonna
area
start
one
get-
not
I'm
having a
not
clerk
voting for you,
representative.
Thane.
I'm probably not voting for me.
So did that clarify?
It did, yeah, it did.
And we think that's how it's working, right?
No,
Are we
that's how
sure
it's
that's
working.
how
No,
it's
that-
working?
that is how it's
Okay,
working.
I thought you
Um,
said, I'll have to come back to you.
I
with
I
that.
was just making a point that I didn't get a question in advance, so
Oh.
I was,
I guess.
Got it.
I guess my question would be like, what, it's a what if, but does anyone know the answer to this? What if both people who are up lived in the same trustee area?
Then you have
Then
to
they run against each other.
Run against
But wouldn't there still have to be two trustees, or no, they just
And
wait?
somebody else in the other area has to run.
Right.
Whatever
It's-
area
yeah,
doesn't
Yeah.
have.
Somebody else has to run that isn't up for reelection?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for living where you live.
No, somebody else has to run who lives in
That
the
Miners Oaks
trustee area.
Right.
area that doesn't
Yeah.
have one right now, somebody would have to run from that Miners Oaks
Right.
area.
All right, I'm not gonna belabor it, but it feels like there's still issues.
But then the question is, when somebody goes to apply at the county, how do they
Determine what district.
Yeah, they're
in.
gonna have to verify that they
Right,
live in the area.
right, because from our waiver has been submitted to the state board, it will be on the March agenda. So from the point when that is approved on the March agenda, which it's on consent, and that point, everything forward will be trustee area election. So when you go to the county to run, if you went today,
Right.
they wouldn't have trustee area elections. When you go on March, whatever, after the state board item is approved and our waiver is approved, it'll be trustee area election.
But you can't apply until
Right.
summer anyway,
Right.
so.
Yes. But if you have any more what ifs, you're welcome to send them to me and I can research them and get back to you.
I will only give you questions like that for which the answer is irrelevant.
Okay.
Even if it's completely wrong, it won't matter.
So do we have a motion to approve the recommended board bylaws and skip the second iteration?
Yes,
Second meeting.
will make that motion.
It's
I'll
getting
move.
late.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nomination for California School Board Association Delegate Assembly candidates.
So we get 4 votes.
We get 4 votes.
And I have suggestions.
Okay.
Does anyone else have?
I have suggestions too. Go ahead.
Should we just do one person at a time and talk about, or?
Give us your slate.
Okay. Jenny Fitz, Darlene Bruno, Efrain Cesares, and Deborah Cordes.
I have serious reservations about Jenny Fitzgerald.
Okay.
Just, and like, I don't know if I should have them, but in Googling I found some things that I thought, that doesn't make me feel comfortable having that person. And she's only been on the board 1 year. Seems very much like an activist
Oh, really? I thought it was
person.
3 years.
Pretty sure she was only on.
That's the one that we received, a couple.
We
of-
received some mail about, but I also just did a fast Google and, you know, I don't want to.
So is there a consensus on
somebody.
Efren?
He was one that I was considering on my slate, and the other one that I was considering was Matthew Almaraz, who I met at CSBA and who is in Ventura, but he's also rather local and is a new soccer coach at Villanova.
A strong Ojai supporter.
Yeah, and knows Ojai, so would be able to better represent our little area. But did you also say Deborah Cordes? Was that on your list, Jim?
Mhm.
Because she was on mine as well, and I only had 3 on mine. I didn't pick a 4th.
Well, I'll join you on Deborah, so that's one.
And can you tell us, I didn't ask this in advance, so you're allowed to say no, but can you tell us what these delegates do?
I think when they go to a delegate assembly a certain number of times a year, and then they vote on issues like, they
Whatever
vote on
they
running
come.
of CSBA.
Right. Okay.
And they vote on behalf of on behalf of Ventura County. So we would vote yes on this vision statement or no on whatever. I do the same thing for access, so
Okay.
I am the representative for a similar organization.
So it sounds like, so far, we have Deborah Cordes, 2 of us have said Efrain.
Efrain, I'll go with 2.
Yeah, same here.
We don't have to recommend 4, I mean, we could vote for.
Well, we have 2 right now. Matthew Almaraz was my 3rd.
I liked his bio. That's all I got to work with.
That's all we really.
I'll join.
Can you give me a second, let me go back to this. Oh, I remember.
How can you vote against someone who says it's truly rewarding seeing the bright light of learning sparkle in a child's eye?
Okay, that's fine by me.
I think most of the issues that they vote on really kind of our big school district versus small school district. So I think for the most part, they're gonna vote against our interests, so I don't really care.
That's why I was
Ocean View is the
looking
same size
for-
as we are.
Right, well, that's the one exception.
Ocean View, they're a little
Yeah.
bigger. They have a lot of supplemental and concentration money, but they're the same size.
Isn't Conejo also small or
No.
CB?
No.
No, those are like 17,000.
Yeah.
My
And
niece
we
like
don't trust
8.
lawyers, Kevin, so.
So I hear Ephraim, Deborah Cortez,
And
and Matthew Alvarez. Do we have a fourth
I was
person
looking at Darlene Bruno.
from Wainimi?
I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
think Scott put enough effort into his,
I found it really hard to read, so I
read.
right.
had.
Scott is my Facebook friend, and I like his, he's always promoting schools on Facebook, but that's all I have to go.
There you go.
It was just hard to read his
Yeah.
answers.
Anybody else? I hear Darlene Bruno.
I had her on my list, but only because I thought we had to have 4, and I realize now we don't have to have 4, so I'll support her if there's a consensus, but I don't need to.
Anybody else? I'm scrolling to her really fast. Do we want to just do 3? A slate of 3? It totally works. Matthew Alvarez, Ephraim Casares, and Deborah Cortez. We like that ending sound in names, apparently.
I mean, if you wanna look at Darlene's, she is talking about full and fair funding. She is, was an extremely involved PTA board member.
Done a lot of training.
Yeah, board's been,
All right.
27 years on the board. I don't
Yeah,
know about that, but,
that's dedication.
talks about STIRS and PERS contributions and concerns.
She was a PTA person. All right, do we have a motion then to,
Send our delegates as Ephraim, Deborah, Darlene, and Matthew.
are you moving?
I am moving.
All right, I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, that passed unanimously. I forgot I was supposed to do that. Board member reports. Do we have any board member reports? All right, I hear nothing. So, future agenda items.
Okay, I'm gonna just throw this out there, it's not for discussion, but I saw something recently about the Mothers Against Gun Violence in Los Angeles and I think San Diego and San Francisco, that they're getting school boards to pass resolutions for gun safety and like locking, that parents, sending information to parents about locking up your guns. And then parents are sort of signing like, yes, like you kind of do for Red Ribbon Week, I'm not doing drugs, yes, my guns are locked. And what they're finding is that it's making gun safety a conversation. And so that something like 85 to 90% of school shootings have happened with a gun from a home that hasn't been locked up. And something like 50% of gun owners say they believe in gun safety, but they don't actually lock theirs up. They're just their safety locks open and there's bullets in the guns. So, just
Are you
something that-
proposing that we?
I would what I was going to do is put it on the parking lot and research it, and if I find something, and I would forward it to administration, get their opinion, and then if you guys feel it might be something we wanna visit, we can talk about it. I think I brought it up when we had some issue. I remember talking to Captain Fryanoff and hoping that the city, not the city council, but like the city police would kind of do this training
Spearhead it.
day on. And even there's, they can come and locks, like even gun locks that prevent, like you have to have a
And
thumbprint
didn't
to.
somebody say that they were giving them away free and couldn't quite, give them away?
Yeah.
That people didn't want them? Yeah,
So, anyway.
thank you. Are there any other future agenda items? If not, we will adjourn.